Okay, Mayor, we're ready? We're ready? Yes.
All right. Yep. Good evening. We call this meeting to order. If you could please rise if you're able to and pay attention to Council Member Valdivia Alcala for the invocation, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. The prayer this evening, I have received permission by its author, Elder Chicana Indigenous Healer Grace Alvarez Sesma. I have worked with Grace, and she currently resides in California. I've worked with her in a number of capacities, and she is an extraordinary healer. She is a member of the Kumeyaw Original Peoples Alliance, the Kanakwan Coalition. In 2019, she was awarded the Mana of Imperial Valley Legacy Award. As part of her community responsibilities, she participates in baby blessing ceremonies, offers opening prayers for gatherings and social justice actions, provides spiritual assistance to persons during end-of-life transitions, participates in purification rituals, and facilitates family and community conflict resolution circles. The first part of the prayer is in Spanish, and then the translation in English. Creador, bendice mis ojos para que pueda ver con amor. Bendice mis labios para que pueda hablar con amor. Bendice mis oídos para que pueda escuchar con amor. Bendice mi corazón para que pueda dar y recibir amor. Bendice mis manos para que todo lo que toque sienta amor. Bendice mis pies para que mi caminar sea una oración sobre nuestra Madre Tierra. Creator, bless my eyes that I may see with love. Bless my ears that I may listen with love. Bless my lips that I may speak with love. Bless my heart that I may give and receive love. Bless my hands that all that I touch feels love. Bless my feet that my walk may be a prayer on Mother Earth.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ortiz destroyed.
We proceed with a roll call.
Mayor De La Isla,
Here.
Council Members Hillard,
Here.
Valdivia Aquila,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Padilla,
Here.
Nager,
Here.
Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Lesser.
Here.
We have 10 present.
10 being present, we have quorum, so this meeting can continue. We now move on to the appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Travis Gooden to the City of Topeka Board of Electrical Appeals for the term ending July 6, 2023.
The mayor does not vote on this item. What is the pleasure of the governing body? We have a motion for approval by Councilman Emerson, a second by the deputy mayor. Comments or questions on this appointment? Seeing none, we proceed by vote.
Council Members Ortiz, Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hillard,
Yes.
and Valdivia Aquila.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
We move on to presentations. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we will have a presentation from Lindsay Anderson regarding the SAVE program. Mike's going to come up first.
Good evening, governing body. My name is not Lindsay Anderson.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Lindsay, you're tall.
Lindsay's much better looking than I am. My name is Mike Kage, thank you. I'm the DA here in Shawnee County, and I just wanted to preface the presentation by sharing with you my perspective on this program, how I got involved in this, and really provide some context for what we're going to be talking about here tonight. In my first year,
Could you turn on your microphone? All three of them? Yeah, right? They're on? Okay.
okay. I'll just use my outside voice, Madam Mayor. That's okay. I have 5 kids. Sometimes I need to get their attention across the room. When I took over the DA's office in 2017, we experienced a catastrophic number of homicides in the city of Topeka, and you all know what year I'm talking about. We had 30 homicides. We had 30 citizens whose lives were taken away from them. And we were beyond the tragic impact that has on a family, on a community. We were buried inside of our office. The workload became almost unmanageable, and law enforcement resources were stretched. So it put a serious strain on our community and on our infrastructure. And I started thinking, how did we get to this point? Why are we here? Why is this happening? Why are we setting a record now? And what can we do about it more than just show up and do our job during the week? And that morphed into a series of conversations with then Police Chief Bill Cochran, who's here with us tonight, and community groups, community members, and it resulted in the formation of what you're going to hear about tonight, which is the SAVE program. And with that, I'm going to yield to Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Lindsay Anderson, and I am the project manager out of the District Attorney's Office for the program called SAVE, which is Strategies Against Violence Everywhere. Okay.
Something happened.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So what is SAVE? So SAVE is an evidence-based intervention model developed from the National Network for Safe Communities called Group Violence Intervention, or GVI for short, that emphasizes on focusing the coordination of law enforcement, social service agencies, and credible community members. And they all have a singular goal of reducing violence that destabilizes the health and well-being of our community. And Shawnee County key stakeholders have come together to commit to building the community's capacity to prevent violence, using enforcement strategically, helping the most vulnerable people, and improving the legitimacy of the police in the eyes of the community. So how does SAVE work? So using the group violence intervention model from National Network for Safe Communities, we focus on groups at the highest risk for violence, of victimization or offending, with the intention to keep those of them alive, safe, and out of prison. The GVI partners focus on groups who commit the most homicides, shootings, and other acts of extreme violence by strengthening community norms against offending, communicating directly with high-risk people to deter violence, and offering extensive case management for those who want a way out of the lifestyle. GVI brings together partnerships of law enforcement, community members, and social service providers with a common but very distinct role. Together, they build intervention-based frontline knowledge and real-time data on violence that people face the greatest risk. So the key roles in SAVE are the project manager, which is my role, and then there also will be a service and outreach coordinator, and that person will be in charge of keeping track of those that are referred to the program, doing the case management, following through with the individuals or families that are actively participating in the program. We also have the Law Enforcement Operational Committee, the Support and Outreach Operational Committee, and then we have the Community Moral Voice Operation Committee. So the structure of SAVE works in 3 different sectors. We have the law enforcement sector, the social service providers, and then the community members. So the law enforcement role is to demonstrate to groups that reducing violence is their top priority. These include police, federal agents, prosecutors, and other partners coordinating on data tracking and enforcement responsibilities. So they do things such as shooting reviews, identifying who drives the most violence, and that's done with a very small group of people, such as a project manager and other law enforcement agencies, to focus on those groups or individuals. And what they also do is they tell group members up front about their partnership that focuses on gun violence, their desire for these group members to be safe and successful in their community, and then the specific consequences if they continue the violence, or exactly how groups or individuals will be held accountable for these shootings or homicides or violent incidents. They all aim at a central approach, which is communicating directly to these group members before the violence occurs, and then reserving special enforcement measures for when groups commit the most violence. When enforcement is necessary, this structure capitalizes on the fact that groups are involved in a variety of crime and offenses. This means law enforcement partnerships have a wide menu of options to deliver these sanctions to the entire group, in addition to pursuing individuals of the violence. These law enforcement partners can include police agencies, the sheriff's office, prosecutor's office, probation and parole, federal agencies such as AFT, DEA, or FBI, and then the corrections department. The second group is the social service providers. And group members typically have specific or immediate needs. As we know, they experience extraordinary high rates of when they are victimized of violence. In this special support and outreach structure, it's tailored particularly to that population. This includes measures to address trauma, methods to protect these group members from harm, such as preventing retaliation, and also the needs such as transportation, education, housing, peer support groups, and substance abuse counseling. The support and outreach structure gives members a pathway from this risky behavior and goals of preventing violence and committing to the lives of being a part of this community to be healthy, safe, and crime-free. Support and outreach partners can include mentoring programs, trauma care providers, reentry programs, street outreach workers, city social service agencies, and other traditional services such as education, employment, mental health, and substance abuse programs. The last portion of this is the community members, and those are credible moral voices from the community. Respected community figures present their message to these members and individuals with three main perspectives. They can be surviving family members of homicide victims, describe the pain of the loss of a loved one. They can be former group members that attest to the limits and the risks of the street code, as well as the possibility of personal transformation. They also can be community leaders that outline group members' heart in a safer and more sustainable community life and express the community's love and hope for them. These credible voices exist in all communities, and their powerful moral authority is can be focused on a very small number of high-risk people driving the violence. These community moral voice members can include mothers or families of members of murdered individuals or have lost someone to gun violence, ex-offenders or former group members, faith leaders, survivors of violence, or street outreach workers as well. So our accomplishments to date, as SAVE has kind of launched over the last year and a half, SAVE has brought the National Network for Safe Communities to Topeka, and we held a one-day conference called Healing Gun Violence, which is exploring evidence-based strategies to create a safer community. That was held at Stormontville Event Center, and that was paid for by some of our partners that have been along the way developing SAVE. The SAVE Executive Advisory Council has also received a $300,000 grant from the Topeka Community Foundation, and that was specifically for the National Network for Safe Communities to facilitate a relationship with SAVE partners on consulting about how this group violence intervention model works. Thirdly, the Shawnee County District Attorney's Office secured county dollars for funding to hire the project manager. We also have had a 2-day data collection exercise in the violent crimes and dynamics of Topeka. That was something that the National Network did, and they spent some very extensive time with law enforcement and their partners going over the incidents over the last year and developing a strategic plan of how to actually implement SAVE in the Topeka community. And then lastly, we've been building strategy teams and community partners throughout the Topeka and Shawnee County area and identifying those agencies or members of the community that are already doing this work. We're not looking at reinventing anything here. We want to really capitalize on those in the community that have those established relationships and are building those partnerships, and trust with the community already. And so we've been working at building these different strategy teams, bringing people on board and what they really have to offer. So our next steps of what we are looking down the road to do, one of the next steps is to look at hiring that service and outreach case manager. That will be the person that will receive these referrals and assist the project manager on case management of these individuals and their families to make sure all their needs are being met. We want to continue to mobilize the community, get their support, their involvement, their awareness of what this program is aiming to do. Also, we are developing a referral process between the project manager and the service and outreach coordinator or case manager for the identified SAVE participants, how their information will be shared, how we get them involved in the program, and how we make sure that they're being case managed appropriately. Tracking measures are another focused area that we're working on, making sure that we have positive outcomes, that we're tracking these individuals and families for their case management. Maintaining strong partnerships, putting the mechanisms in place to track this violence and help each partner with routine SAVE activities in their agency. And then lastly, communicating with the community and reinforcing the shared mission of the strategy to reduce the violence, strengthen the community and the relationships with law enforcement and the use of enforcement in a strategic way. I will let DAKA close, and then we will take questions.
So now that you have a baseline understanding for what the SAVE program is, are there any questions specific to the presentation? And if not, I'd like to say a couple of things, if I may.
I do have a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr. Kage. It's pretty broad, and I had been hearing something about the SAVE program and community, but I do have a couple of questions for you or whoever else wants to respond. I heard Lindsay say that it's evidence-based, and what exactly, I mean, are we as a council able to get a little bit more in-depth with what you're talking about here? And I would be interested in seeing the evidence based on it and how it has worked in other communities, since I don't think the city's investing any dollars, correct, city manager? No dollars?
It's in the budget it's in the budget for next year to potentially give $30,000 towards this project.
Okay. Well, still, I would like to find out what the evidence-based information actually is. And when it focuses on page 3 about focusing on groups who commit most homicides, shooting, and other acts of extreme violence, how is it defined who these groups are? Because I'm a layperson, I don't understand this verbiage. I mean, how is this, what do you mean by groups? Are you talking about specifically the ones that have already done the violence, and then you're focusing specifically in on them, or?
Yes, that is the general idea, and group meaning the common understanding of the word.
Okay.
So take 3 of us here in a room, and I'll go do something together. We're a group. If our group engages in violence, or one of us engages in violence, it stands to reason that the others in the group are at high risk because they're involved in those behaviors, or they're surrounded by that environment. And this program seeks to identify and intervene and prevent those who have not, gone around shooting people in the city of Topeka from engaging in that type of behavior. It seeks to discourage it and offer them resources and get them redirected.
And acts of extreme, and other acts of extreme violence, how is that defined? I mean, you say homicides, shootings. Are we talking basically anything with a gun?
Well,
Likely, or beating,
a stabbing,
or brutal stabbing.
I think any kind of deadly
anything of
attack
that.
could be characterized
Okay.
that way,
Okay.
certainly.
And strengthening community norms against offending. Is there specific 1, 2, 3, 4 about what these community norms are considered in the SAVE program?
I'll defer to Lindsay because we're getting down into some more specifics there.
Okay.
So when we're talking about community norms, we're really talking about the community focusing on wanting these groups or individuals to understand that they are a part of this community and their decisions impact the safety, the health, and the well-being of the community. And the norms are set from the community and the support, centrally focused on establishing relationships with these individuals and saying, we want you safe and alive and out of prison. You do contribute to the community. You are valued. There are opportunities for you to make a decision to redirect your life in a more positive way.
Okay, so that kind of vagueness, but there's nothing that's 1, 2, 3 stating what norms are other than what you just defined.
Right,
and that's still rather broad. But
and I think as the program progresses, there will be some norms set from the partnerships or the, community members, but looking at the GVI model itself, they don't establish specific norms. It's more focused towards each community, and, Topeka will be specialized, and say that we had it in Lawrence. It would be very different than what the community expects from their members versus another community.
Okay, and so the communicating directly with high-risk people to deter violence, that's going to be a combination of your outreach people, that's going to be a combination of social service agencies that may be wanting to help them, even maybe their probation officer, or could it possibly be in TPD as well?
Correct.
And gives a pathway on page 5, the structure of SAVE, social service provider, gives a pathway from risky behavior. The pathway, again, we're not going to see anything set in stone either. It's just going to be kind of however Topeka works and what may work for that individual, modeled specific to that particular individual?
And it will be individual based. So what are the needs of that individual and what services or prevention intervention that can be provided specifically to that individual and tailored to that individual. So there will not be a cookie cutter that every person or group fits the mold. It will be very tailored individually to each of their circumstances.
And on the new and positive relationships, I guess that would be another way to get them to leave perhaps that life behind and venture on a new path. And I'm wondering, because I think this has been in the works for some time, from just little bits that I've heard. I started hearing about this last summer.
Right.
So have you all gone then, and I'm not specifically talking about clergy. I'm not talking about pastors or clergy. I'm talking about into the community. Have you guys had then interaction with knee-deep community members, elders in communities that may not be affiliated with churches that play a role in any number of ways that you may not see all the time on the news or what have you?
Specifically, no, but that is part of what we are building is the capacity to do that and make sure we are reaching every portion of the community that may not be affiliated, with an organization or, you know, any type of faith-based agency or anything like that. How do we reach those individuals? How do we reach those families? How do we build that relationship and that partnership and honestly get them to communicate with us and trust?
Because to my understanding, just the understanding I have, not of law enforcement, but of grassroots community
Right.
work, is that that's where the real work is.
Right.
And I would
Absolutely.
say beyond pastors.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Good questions. Anyone else have some questions? I would encourage you to, if you have some thoughts or ideas, to bring Councilwoman Taylor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I remember going to the presentation that they made at first, and it's a very compelling new approach, kind of common sense in a way.
Kind of is.
What kind of pace, what kind of volume of clientele or whatever term you would use and pace of change are you hoping for or expecting, whichever?
Well, we haven't actually tried to sit down and define what that looks like, to be honest with you. I'm hoping to make a difference, and I'm hoping to reduce violence in this community, and I'm hoping to change perceptions of why people engage in violence. And I think the important thing is, once we start implementing this program, that narrative is going to be out there. And yeah, you've heard some blurbs here and there. We're talking about the SAVE program, but we haven't started implementation yet. We're still in the building phase. I'd like to get that done, and I'd like to get this, you know, on the ground within the next 90 days. And once you do that, you have to be able to deliver. We had a meeting earlier today with community members, and that was their challenge to us. This sounds like a great program if it's going to work, but if I call you, are you going to be able to say yes? We have to be able to say yes. We have to be able to meet their needs, and we have to be able to meet them where they are. And I think that's key to the success of the program. But going back to your question, I don't have a specific metric in mind. I know when this program has been implemented successfully in other cities, they've seen reductions between 40 to 60% in their homicide rate. I think anything along those lines would be, I think we would all agree that would be a huge success. So what I'm trying to do, and the program is aptly named, right? We're trying to save lives. That's what this program is designed to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If I may ask, I'm trying to remember, at one point, did the same group provide a kind of a white paper summary explanation of what the program hopes to accomplish? And was it sent out? Well, first it was on completely, and now it's on. And was it? And likely it was sent out to all council members. Would you please check and see if that was done, and if necessary, provide it again, because I think that might help refresh, because it's been a while in the making, and a lot of things come and go. So to make sure that we're refreshed about the purpose and intent, and I think that would help some of us.
Thank you. I think that's a great suggestion. I'll make sure that gets done immediately following this presentation.
Any questions up there from the screen? Anyone from Zoom? Okay. Oh, okay. Councilwoman Ortiz. There she is.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to ask the DA, Mike Kage, will we get the strategic plan? Will you show us the strategic plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Short answer.
He might still be mad at me from the meeting. I don't know. I can hear you loud and clear.
I'm not mad at you.
I don't know what's going on there. Does this plan include our youth? Are we starting with them? Are we starting with our young adults? Where are we starting on this plan?
I think it's going to be a combination of our youth and the young adults. I think that's where we need to focus, where we can make the most progress, because honestly, they'll be the ones that are most receptive to these opportunities that we're discussing.
Absolutely, because some of this is just a way of life for them. You know, you pick up a gun, you handle it yourself. That's just how it is. I want to take you back several years. Myself and then Councilman John Akala, we met with some of the gang members and we sat down with them and we asked them, what do you want? How can we stop this violence? And we had violence back then. And a lot of them were just asking to be educated, you know, to be educated and give them the tools, to give their kids the tools that they never had, you know. And so that's why I'm asking, where are we going to start? That's why I like to start with the kids, because I never, ever forgot that message that was sent to me that day. A lot of them want out, they just don't know how to get out. Especially when their parents, that's their way of life, you know. And so it's just like a generation thing. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that we can maybe offer them more things than just the average, you know, because I think that's something that's needed, and so that they get a clear understanding of where they need to go to get help or how they can get help, because not all of them want to be in that situation. And so my last question is, so what is our 30,000? What does that get us?
This goes to support the outreach position that was described in the presentation, and this is the person who will coordinate a lot of those resources that you were just referencing, that people do desperately need and want for their families, for their children.
Okay. Well, again, I commend you for this. It's something that can work if it's worked right. And I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you. Say Christina. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Mr. Kage, to kind of add on to what Councilwoman Ortiz was talking about, I would hope that when we do get to see a strategic plan, that there's something in there that looks at not only the individual, but like Councilwoman Ortiz is saying, the systems that have created these problems. For the most part, the majority of these kids, unless they're born with certain tendencies that are sociopaths or psychopaths or whatever the case may be, which most people are not, is that these are systemic issues of poverty, systemic issues in the education system, in the educational system. So it would be really interesting to see if you all end up partnering with 501. And I'm talking about even what's taught in the classroom, because our children, especially specifically children of color, are not being mirrored in the school system. That's not your issue, but I'm saying it's part of an issue. So I hope that, you know, issues of no living wage, which of course we can't deal with, but we can start having conversations about that feed into cycles of poverty within these families that these children are coming from, that these adults, young adults are coming from. So I certainly hope it's not like in psychology, often there's this thing where you focus on the badness of the kid, right? And I don't have your knowledge. But usually what you see when you really start looking at the situation, it is the situation that has been built and perpetuated around them that can include societal issues that end up putting many kids into depression, anxiety, and into the hands of law enforcement. So I would just hope that that would be part of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. If I may, to address both what you just mentioned and Councilmember Ortiz talked about, this is a very different way of approaching how resources can be brought to just the groups that you just spoke to about, because it's trying to understand how that person, that family came to this situation that they are in now, and why is it being repeated? What elements of their lives could positively impact their lives so that they wouldn't repeat some of the behaviors that we're witnessing. Like as mentioned, education, access to health care, mental health care, all of those kinds of things that sometimes do get overlooked when an arrest is made.
That's
and that
right.
outreach person will hopefully be able to draw that out from those individuals and their families. And it's not fixing or helping just that individual. It's the whole family pod or the whole community in that neighborhood that they live in that they affect by their activity and behavior. So it really is a different way of looking at, well, we'll put this individual on a path of recovery and help, but maybe overlook all the other individuals that have an influence on that person. And if, let's say it's Spencer's the one that's out of control. We get Tuck and his mother, Kathy, and others who support him to support his recovery and work to get out of that situation. And I think that's at the core of what SAVE is. It's not a magic bullet by any means. And as you point out, there's nothing specific at this point because each family, each individual is going to vary in their needs and what will help them change their behavior. So as it develops, I believe that's how it will become Topeka's version of the SAVE program, because it will customize itself for the citizens that we have and their specific needs. So thank you for giving me the time to make that comment, because I've been involved with the efforts of SAVE for, like you said, at least a year or more. And I'm at the point, too, that I know others are, who are ready to try and start to help people rather than just talking about it. So thank you, Mr. DA.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No, any further questions, City Manager?
The mention about the city, are most of these cases from the city, or is it going to be a countywide program, or how do you see?
I think we're going to go where the violence is, but in my experience, in my 5 years as DA, it's overwhelmingly from the city of Topeka. I can think of maybe 2 homicides that have occurred outside the city, and the number of shootings that go on in the county is minimus. Almost all of our violence is located within the borders of the city. And to that point, City Manager, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and present today, and for taking the time to understand our program and to give it an opportunity to succeed. I did go to the county commissioners last year, and I got funding to hire Cindy. Who's Cindy? I hired Lindsay specifically. I don't know who Cindy is. And their question to me was, well, why is this a county problem? Isn't all the violence going on in the city? And I said, yes, but I'm responsible for all of this, and we're going to start here. And I told them I would be here, in the future, speaking to the city governing body and giving you all an opportunity to partner in the program. So thank you.
Thank you. I think Councilwoman Ortiz had a question. Sylvia?
No, I wanted to say one more thing. I know Christina said it's not just a minister's problem, but we need to make everybody own this. And I say that because, not to stop there, but everybody needs to own it. I can remember a case of a 12-year-old kid that got caught stealing, breaking in somebody's house and stealing some food. And he got prosecuted. And so I would hope that you would bring in your judges as well, because they need to be at the table. Everybody needs to be at the table that takes part in this. And I thought it was very harsh that that young man got prosecuted. It was one of our horror cases, because he was just hungry, and so you can get the community involved, but our judges and our lawyers and our attorneys, they're a part of our community, and they need to have a space at the table so they can also understand what the community is going through when they go through actions like that. So I just wanted to say that case came to my mind, and And I think it's very important that you not overlook anybody at the table. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anyone else wish to comment or have any questions? Okay, Council Member Hannah. Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for your guys' work so far. I'm very encouraged to hear how you are pushing this. And as the daughter of a 501 social worker, I'm really, really happy to hear the discussions that we're having and talking about all of the many sources for feeling that need to resort to drastic measures, knowing that there are many people in this community who do feel driven or feel like there is only one choice for them. And so I do feel very encouraged hearing this conversation and knowing that this is where our leaders are and this is where our DA office is. I think kind of to speak to what Councilwoman Ortiz was saying, and maybe just go back even to the city commissioners, I mean, not the city, the county commissioners saying, isn't this more of a city problem? This is a problem that involves all of us and we all need to take action. So I'm glad that you guys are leading the way, but I do think this is also a call to action for everyone else in the community to be on the lookout, to know what they can do, even if it's a small action in their eyes, to help keep people from feeling like there is only the most drastic option for them. So thank you for your guys' work, and thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nager. Anyone else? I want to make sure I haven't overlooked somebody. Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember Dobler, and then Councilmember Lesser.
Yeah, just a quick, I guess, point of clarification on Mr. Kage's presentation to the county. The last time I checked, every parcel in the city of Topeka is also in Shawnee County. I think probably the city of Topeka pays the bulk of property taxes to Shawnee County. So I understand the sentiment, but it is not just a city of Topeka problem. Thank you.
And if I may clarify.
Mr. DA, go ahead.
Yes. I believe I said the commissioners. It was one commissioner in particular who I will not name. And I agree. It is a we, and we're all in this together. And I think Councilwoman Nager said it very eloquently just a moment ago, so I won't try and rephrase that. I don't think that's the majority sentiment from the county. And I am here today trying to establish another city-county partnership. And the last thing I want to do is create any kind of a misunderstanding there. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lesser.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Padilla. No, I just wanted to say thank you as well for your hard work, Mike. I have the privilege of considering Mike a friend, and he's talked to me about this, and I know the passion that he has for this. It's not just words, it's a passion that he has, and we've had conversations about this. So I take lots of confidence in knowing where your heart is and knowing how you care from all the conversations we've had about this. So I do thank you, and I feel in good hands with you at the helm of this. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Any further questions from the council? Okay. Mr. DA, thank you. And Lindsay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you all.
We have a second presentation, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, if you could bring up Jeff White.
Yes, Jeff White.
So tonight, we are going to have a presentation regarding economic development tools. It's been at least 18 months since this has been talked about here at the table. We have a number of projects that we're currently working on and negotiating with developers on, and we felt that it would be good to go through and discuss again what each of these tools can do. Jeff will kind of do a quick overview related to this and then questions. The one little component that's different this year that he'll cover on also is how Senate Bill 13 is going to affect these economic development tools and impact the city. We all know that we're talking about the need to consider having a hearing to exceed revenue neutral, if we want to do that. There are implications if we do not exceed revenue neutral. And so Jeff's going to talk a little bit about that as we're seeing that. It's new legislation and we're learning how this impact is really going to come. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the council. Jeff White with Columbia Capital. I do have a presentation here of significant length, and I did that on purpose because I don't intend to walk through each and every slide tonight. You can be thankful for that. And so I want to cover a couple of these, as Brent mentioned, because we expect that you will see requests related to these incentives coming down the line. But I also want to make sure I leave plenty of time for your questions to go. So the key similarities, with the exception of one, there's one of these that doesn't look like the other, and that has to do with IRB conduit issuance, which I'll talk about pretty briefly, is that most of these are incentives related to the development of projects that might not be able to occur using sort of a market-based return. So a market-based return is, you buy a vacant parcel, you build a building, residential, commercial, whatever the case is, and you open a business and you start paying taxes, and there's no sort of city incentives related to that. In many parts of the community, and it's not just Topeka, it's in a lot of places, there are challenges to that kind of development occurring, particularly with respect to parcels that have abandoned buildings. They may have environmental issues, they may have flooding challenges, they may be subject to illegal dumping over time. Maybe the parcels are too small to accommodate modern development, those types of things. And so cities in Kansas have a number of tools to help private developers sort of address those situations, to really bring the cost of development for redeveloped properties to the same level as those on a greenfield site where those types of site conditions aren't present. So the key similarities between these is they are typically developer driven. All of them have process associated with that in almost every case, I think, including public process and significant opportunities along the line for the governing body to have involvement, to ask questions, to interact. All of these provide significant benefit to private entities, and it's really sort of a redirection of public resources to private entities. And as a result, we try, when we bring these to you, to have done a significant amount of homework to assess that the amount of incentive that we're bringing to you for approval is appropriate to allow that development to occur, but not to provide the developer with an above market rate of return. And typically most of these, particularly the more complicated they are documented in the form of a development agreement, a contract that spells out the rights and responsibilities of each party. So the first place we're going to stop is industrial revenue bonds. And there's two common things. There's really three common things that IRBs do in Kansas, and it's sort of an odd mix. So I'm going to start with the one that doesn't look like the other, and I'm only going to spend a few minutes on it. You may have recalled in recent years, for instance, for the Sunflower Foundation and others, that nonprofits can approach the city to ask them to issue bonds on their behalf in the tax-exempt bond market. So nonprofit organizations doing capital expenditures within their mission, within their nonprofit mission, generally have the right to borrow in the tax-exempt market. But unlike the city, they can't access that market directly. They have to work through a governmental issuer. So the city can use the industrial revenue bond statutes in Kansas to provide access to those nonprofits to the tax-exempt bond community. And as those of you who have been through this remember, in that situation, although the city's issuing the bonds, the city has no obligation on the payment of those bonds. It's simply facilitating access for that nonprofit. So that's as much as I'm going to say about IRBs for nonprofits tonight, because I do want to focus on development incentives. The two other types of things that we use industrial revenue bonds for are to provide ad valorem tax abatement and to provide an exemption from sales taxes on construction goods and materials. So with respect to IRBs issued for the purpose of providing tax abatement, in Kansas, we can provide up to 100% benefit for up to 10 years. Generally speaking, IRBs for tax abatement cannot be used for retail, but if you think of any other type of use, residential, commercial, industrial, it would generally apply to those. The tax abatement abates all levies with the exception of starting after the 2017 legislative session to the extent an affected school district levies a capital mill levy, that up to 8 mill levy is now excluded from capture or abatement with an IRB tax abatement. And with tax abatement, unlike with TIF, which we'll talk about in a second, there is negative impact to the base value. So to the extent that there is value already on the books, unless it's sort of adjusted in the business deal with the developer with respect to the level of abatement, the entire property comes off the tax rolls during the term of the abatement. IRB tax abatements are a two-step process. So generally, the first step is the governing body would be asked to adopt a resolution of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds. Then the developer constructs the project, and the tax abatement itself commences the year after bonds are issued. So in this case, bonds are issued. Most of these bonds, again, just like IRBs issued for nonprofits, the city has no obligation for repayments of these bonds. And in almost every case, these bonds are issued as what we call buyer-owned bond structures. So the purchaser of the bonds is actually the developer or the developer's bank itself. So we have to use the bonds because that's the statutory mechanism in order to generate the tax abatement. Very commonly, we are also seeing requests, typically along with IRB property tax abatement, and in many cases with tax increment finance as well, a request for a sales tax exemption on construction goods. This is also provided via the IRB route. This can be a standalone incentive offered, so we can offer IRB sales tax exemption both with ad valorem tax abatement and without it. And again, just like IRBs issued for tax abatement, property tax abatement purposes, these bonds are offered as buyer-owned bond structures, and the city is not obligated to repayment. I am going to skip over CIDs tonight. Those of you who have been on council for a while have run into this in the past, and I'm certainly happy to try and answer any questions you've got on CIDs. Hopefully I've left you enough information in the presentation that you can sort of glean what those are and how they work. But I do want to jump really quickly to tax increment financing, or TIF, as I will continue to call it here. The concept on TIF is within a designated geographic area to lock down the existing value, property tax value in that district, and sales tax as well, to build new things there, and then to capture the incremental valuation that's created, the new tax base that's created from that development, to levy the normal taxes we would levy for any other property nearby that TIF district. But instead of those tax dollars running to underlying taxing jurisdictions, they're captured by the county and redirected back to the city for deposit in a special fund. Then from that special fund, the city can reimburse the developer for TIF eligible costs that it incurred in creating that development. It's important to note if any of you run into TIF in Missouri and other states where it's a separate legal entity, TIF districts are. Here in Kansas, it's an overlay district that's not a separate legal entity. For the visual learners, pretty picture here on the left-hand side, we take an area that is underdeveloped. Maybe it's an abandoned property, maybe there's buildings to demolish, maybe there's environmental problems, maybe there's floodplain issues. And then we invest in those projects to create housing, commercial, retail, industrial, those kinds of things. A quick illustration of what we're talking about. So on the left side, we take today's value of that property. Let's assume that the assessed valuation there is $10,000 today. We have a total levy of 140 mils. So we're generating $1,400 in total property taxes on that site today. We then redevelop it and we capture the increment. So our assessed value jumps from $10,000 to $100,000, a tenfold increase. Again, we're only capturing the increment. The base taxes always continue to go back to the underlying taxing jurisdictions. So we take that $90,000. We are, with TIF, not able to capture 100% of the levy. We exclude levies for the statewide school levy, the school capital levy that I talked about a minute ago, that 8 mils, and then 1.5 mils for the state. That generates incremental property taxes. So in this case, our newly developed property generates $14,000 in property taxes, so 10 times what it did before. Roughly $10,000 of that $14,000 is actually captured by the TIF. The rest actually flows through to the taxing jurisdictions. We can do the same thing with locally levied sales taxes and even with things like franchise fees and transient guest taxes as well. So importantly, TIF cannot be used everywhere. IRB tax abatement can be used any place except related to retail. TIF has to be used in a designated TIF district, and the statute gives us a number of ways to accomplish designating a TIF district. And again, the statutory intent here is to take properties that need redevelopment. So TIF really was not created with the idea of taking greenfield sites that don't need a little boost for development. It's really intended to be sort of a redevelopment type of a tool, an existing site that maybe, like I said, has environmental problems, that has abandoned buildings, that isn't terribly developable for site conditions, those kinds of things. So the statute gives us a number of paths in order to get to the designation of a TIF district. The most commonly used one is the designation of blight, and the statute actually sets forth a number of criteria that have to be met in order for a particular property to be determined to be blighted. That is actually a legislative finding by the governing body, usually based upon a study performed that documents the conditions within the district that match the statutory criteria for the designation of blight. There's another provision called conservation area. This is jokingly in many places sometimes called Prairie Village TIF, as I think the first conservation area was done in Prairie Village. This is the idea that an area is not yet blighted, but structures and infrastructure is very dated, and the idea is without some reinvestment that it could become blighted over time. Kansas has a unique statutory path to TIF district called the pre-1992 enterprise zone designation. I'll show you a little graphic on that. And then a couple other sort of unique areas that are not going to apply in a lot of cases. So I've provided here the 1992 version of GIS, which is taking a paper map and a pencil and shading it. Welcome to the bad old days. This shows the pre-1992 Topeka enterprise zones. And it may be pretty hard to see, but quite a bit of the core of North Topeka, almost all of the core of downtown Topeka, the area where the turnpike dumps off on South Topeka Boulevard, and then a couple other areas of the community as well. So again, in these shaded areas, these pre-1992 enterprise zones, they're presumed qualified for TIF, so we don't need to go through the process of designating blight or declaring them a conservation district. So importantly in Kansas, once we've created the district and once we've approved a TIF project plan, there's only certain things that we can pay for. And that generally is going to include land acquisition, site preparation, including demolition, public infrastructure, parking, and with the exception of sort of some special purposes that likely won't apply in most cases, we cannot pay for privately owned vertical development with TIF dollars. That makes it very different from other states, Missouri in particular, where it can be used that way. So again, TIF in Kansas is primarily focused on reimbursing the developer for costs associated with horizontal construction and land acquisition. So unlike property tax abatement, where we are affecting the base, with tax increment financing, we're not affecting base valuation and base taxes. So to the extent taxes in the TIF district are being collected today, those taxes continue to run to the underlying taxing jurisdictions in proportion to their mill levy to the total. The other thing that I think is really important and maybe misunderstood is the property owners within the TIF pay the exact same property taxes and sales taxes that property owners directly adjacent to the TIF do, presuming they're in the same taxing area. So unlike tax abatement, where the property owner is essentially only paying a portion of its tax bill that its neighbors are paying for a period of 10 years in a TIF, those property owners in that TIF district are paying exactly the taxes their neighbors are. It's just that when those taxes reach the county again is segregating the incremental taxes, returning them to the city for a deposit in a special TIF fund, and then making those available to reimburse TIF eligible costs. Again, in contrast to IRB tax abatement, TIFs can run for up to 20 years in Kansas versus 10 for tax abatement. For those of you who have been through the pain of creating these in the past, you will probably remember that this is a two-step process. So the first step is that a TIF district is created. There's a statutory process that occurs to do that. It involves a public hearing. And again, we need to meet one of those statutory criteria to create that district: blight, conservation district, pre-92 enterprise zone. Once the district is created, then within that district, we can have one or more project plans. And the project plan has a much more specific intended use of the TIF dollars. So typically you will see project plans that say we're going to build 3 warehouse and distribution facilities totaling 2 million square feet. Our development plan shows these being built over 4 years. We anticipate the uses to be warehouse distribution, those types of things. And you can see from the slide that there are other requirements necessary in order to create that TIF project plan, including a supermajority vote by the governing body. One important point before I leave this slide back to the creation of the district itself, you will notice that once the council has adopted an ordinance creating the TIF district, any affected county and school district each have up to 30 days to take positive action to veto the creation of the TIF. So if an affected county or an affected school district makes a finding that the TIF is expected to have a negative impact on it according to the statute, it can block the creation of the TIF district. There are 2 types of ways to finance TIF projects in Kansas. The more common of the 2 is called pay-as-you-go financing, or you will hear us refer to it as PAYGO. And what that means is that the developer incurs the costs, it finances all the costs on its own. It bundles those receipts together, submits those to the city. The city goes through a process to verify and approve those receipts. And then as TIF dollars come in from the project after it's constructed and open and starts paying taxes, the city then reimburses the developer to the extent that TIF dollars are available within that special fund that I mentioned. The other approach is that the statute allows bonds to be issued to be secured by the TIF dollars that are created in that project area. You may recall the city actually has a series of outstanding TIF bonds issued for the project at 17th and Washburn, in that neighborhood anyways, that are actually backed by the city's general obligation pledge. And so those are really sort of GO bonds with TIF backing, but TIF bonds can also be issued on their own credit as well, presuming that the market will accept the product. Alrighty, so I know I'm moving very quickly, but I do want to chat a little bit about SB 13, something I'm sure have felt like you've heard too much about already. I know that staff has briefed you on this, but just as a quick reminder, with SB 13 in place, generally speaking, the city would have to take action after public hearing in order to have tax collections next year exceed its tax collections for this year, the so-called revenue neutral rate, or RNR. The effect of this, as you'll recall, is that if the city does nothing and its assessed valuation is growing, what it means is its mill levy is naturally going to get smaller over time. It's not just the city, it's all taxing jurisdictions affected. So unlike the tax lid law that you're all familiar with and has been in place over the last 5 or 6 years now, that rolls off as the result of SB 13, there are no exclusions from the R&R calculation, and you can see the list there, but the key ones are new construction, which is obviously the point of economic development incentives, and properties coming off of abatement. And so one of the promises, of course, of issuing a tax abatement on behalf of a project is that after 10 years, presuming the abatement runs 10 years, that project comes fully back on the tax rolls and the city benefits from a much higher assessed valuation on that particular project site than was the case when it issued the IRBs 10 years prior. So that has some interesting implications for the city's operating budget going forward. So as I mentioned, sort of the promise of these economic development incentives is for the city to delay public benefit in exchange for getting development that might not occur otherwise on a specific site. So without the governing body's willingness to override the revenue neutral rate, SB 13 could have some unwelcome outcomes with respect to that sort of promise of economic development in the city. So the first one is one where if you imagine a situation where we have a TIF district created, and that TIF district is developing and creating new assessed valuation, and the city does not override the RNR, you actually could end up in a situation where your other city governmental funds are subsidizing the TIF fund, because that TIF fund is going to be filled based upon the incremental assessed valuation within that district itself, not citywide. And so you could have this very strange situation where instead of economic development benefiting the rest of the city's general taxpayers would be effectively further subsidizing the development by shifting tax dollars from its general governmental funds over into the TIF fund. The same sort of thing could occur with properties that are rolling off of tax abatement. So again, the promise of a 10-year tax abatement is year 11, that property is fully on the tax rolls and generating a significant amount of new tax revenue, not just for the city, but for all other taxing entities. If the city doesn't take action to exceed the revenue neutral rate, that all of that new taxing horsepower potentially gets directed into rolling down the mill levy. That may be counter to the council's intended benefit of that project going forward if it desired to, when it did that tax abatement at the beginning, to provide new dollars to fund public services, particularly to the extent that incentivized development is taxing resources, fire, police, social services, those kinds of things. I will say that with the case of tax abatements, not all tax abatements are structured for 10 years at 100%. Often the city will negotiate a smaller level of benefit, so maybe it's 10 years at 75% or something like that. Technically speaking, every property tax abatement in Kansas is 100% abatement, and then by contract, you and the developer agree to reduce the effective benefit by having them pay what's called payments in lieu of taxes. Sort of unclear to me at this point how those payments in lieu of taxes would be treated under SB 17 and whether it would have the same impact as a regular dollar of property taxes. My anticipation is that it would be, but again, that has implications for the R&R as well. I will say that as we've had conversations with communities, particularly ones that are seeing quite a bit of economic development, we've talked to their governing bodies about creating a policy related to R&R overrides. and looking at sort of general conditions in which the city would consider an R&R override, particularly to make sure that the community is gaining the benefit it expects from economic development, or for things like added territory through annexation, or for the issuance of new GO bonds to the extent tax dollars are required to fund those properties. And I will also tell you, unfortunately, I've had a couple clients that have seen pretty significant county administrative errors in the calculation of the R&R, including one that was almost a 10 mil mistake. And that could be fairly catastrophic, as you can imagine. If you intended to impose the R&R, keep the total tax collections the same as last year, and you ended up with 10 mils less in levying power than you did for the prior year. So with that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I will stop yakking and try to answer any questions you and your colleagues might have.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions from the council? Councilmember Hager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. White, thank you so much for the presentation. I know that whenever TIFs come up, there are definitely people in my district who automatically get a little bit seasick about it because they see it as the county is capturing all of the taxes that we should be allocating to what could be everything and setting it aside for only certain entities. Do we know how, and this might be more of a question for the city manager as well, do we know how much money usually is in that TIF account, and does it get used pretty regularly? Do people have to wait around for more TIF money to be collected in order to go ahead and keep up with the projects, or people not keeping up with the projects and there's just a lot of money just sitting there?
So generally speaking, there is not a lot of money sitting around. And the reason for that is most TIF projects in Kansas are structured as the pay-as-you-go route. And what that means is that if you take a picture a parcel that is, for all intents and purposes, vacant, right? And you create a TIF district and a project plan in 2020. The developer starts constructing on that site, and the construction period runs through the end of 2022. So let's say that the project is completely done on New Year's Eve of 2022. In Kansas, on January 1 of each year, every county goes out and it values each parcel of property within its county. So on January 1 of 2023, we would get the full benefit of that new development on that site. We don't see any tax revenue from that January 1 valuation until January of the next year. So January of 2024 is the first opportunity that any dollars would have flowed into that for that particular project. But in the meantime, the developer has constructed the entire project. So they've maxed out whatever TIF allowance we've given them. They've financed that themselves, and there are no TIF dollars available yet in order to reimburse those costs. So typically what happens is we get to 2024, the first dollars of TIF come into the gate. The developer already has millions of dollars of TIF eligible costs they've certified to the city that are waiting for those dollars. What happens is they come in, the city recognizes that they're there, they see that they owe the developer dollars, they wire the funds right back out, and that TIF account is back down to zero until the next tax payment comes in June.
So ostensibly, the citizens are just making those monthly payments to the contractor who's really out the money at that point. Am I?
In most of these, the developer is fronting nearly all of the cost, either through their own equity or through a mix of equity and debt. And then they're being reimbursed for those TIF eligible costs over the 20-year period. Sometimes they run out of clock before they run out of cost to be reimbursed, and that's the developer's risk on a pay-go. Certainly, it typically is going to take a number of years to sort of make that developer even on full reimbursement for those TIF eligible costs.
Okay, and then my final question is, if it is something that would be hurtful that's where you were talking about how a school district or a county government could come forward and say, this isn't going to work for us.
And again, as a reminder, TIF creation has two steps, district and project plan, and there can be multiple project plans within a district. So it's at the district level that the city and that the county and the school district, or school districts in some cases, have that veto right. I will tell you that tends to be challenging for them, because the information, statutorily required information at the district level is pretty 30,000 foot about what's going to happen in that TIF district. And that's sort of a one and done opportunity for them to formally express concern through a veto about what's going to occur there. So we generally encourage developers to open a dialogue with the school district and with the county to let them know what's going on and to provide as much information as they can so that the county and the school district have the ability to make an informed choice. I will tell you that after 2017, when the statute changed to exclude the school's capital levy from capture by TIF, the schools, generally speaking, are not financially impacted directly by TIF district creation. So the typical type of thing that tends to cause heartburn for districts are those types of projects that are expected to create a whole bunch of new school kids. And at that point, they've got to do the math whether the state aid per student ends up being a benefit or a curse, particularly in fast-growing areas where maybe schools are already at capacity, and that might tip them into having to build a new school. But again, we tend to find that things go a lot better when developers are having direct dialogue with the districts to let them know what's coming.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. White, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, on slide 27, I don't know if you can bring that back up, if that's easy to do, or would that be a huge mess? Well, in any case, I can read it to you.
Let's find it right here.
If the R&R, the revenue neutral rate, is not over, okay, there it is. So a situation could arise where revenues from the city, can you explain, is that something that would always happen, or is it some special circumstance?
No, and again, I think we're still finding our way. Brand new legislation, and counties, to be very fair to them, take really the full burden of sort of the administrative crap associated with this new law. So they're trying to figure it out as well. But the concept is this: if you have a TIF district, and let's say that your incremental tax generation in that district was $30,000. So let's just make up a number.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city is obligated by statute, and it'll be obligated by contract with the developer, to set that $30,000 of increment aside in that TIF fund and make that available solely for that TIF project. If the city does not, let's say the city does, and that $30,000 is new taxes this year that wasn't on the city's R&R calculation last year. So the city doesn't approve an R&R override. It's effectively taking $30,000 from its prior year general government's levy and shifting that into the TIF fund in order to cover the increment that's created in that TIF district. So it's a very bizarre situation where instead of the TIF district paying its own way, it's the general tax dollars of the city that are effectively paying the way of that development, which again is sort of, I think, directly contrary to what folks would expect when they approve these kinds of TIF districts.
So thank you for that. So under what you just explained, that would happen every time, correct?
It would, and anytime you've got a TIF district that is generating, new increment year over year, not all of them do, but presumably presumably particularly early in the life of the TIF, when you're seeing new valuation come on as buildings are constructed and come fully on the tax rolls, that's when you're going to really see this impact. If it's fully developed and sort of back in an inflationary situation where, you know, it's only increasing kind of as the economy improves and those kinds of things, less impactful. But certainly early in the life of that TIF is when you're going to see this impact.
Is this something you feel like was intended, or is this an unintended thing of the bill they passed?
I have to think it's an unintended consequence. I mean, we sort of have the same conversation with respect to the issuance of general obligation bonds. So imagine for a second, you have no GO debt outstanding, right? And you decide to issue GO for a street project or something like that. And fundamentally, GO is property tax supported. So you issue bonds and you intended to generate property taxes to pay for that. If you don't approve an R&R override to effectively raise taxes or allow taxes to be raised in the amount of that debt service payment, you're effectively taking it from revenues that went to other public services last year to cover that debt service cost. And so I have to think that it was sort of an oversight. I don't know that it was intentional. Same weirdness occurs if the city were to annex property. That those new tax dollars that come from that new territory that weren't in the city last year are in the city this year. You're effectively you're not getting credit for that unless you have an R&R override.
Thank you.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth. But it sounds to me like tonight you are telling us as a governing body that at this point it's your assessment that we should always override the R&R. Because to not do so would create problems.
I'm suggesting that if your intended purpose in doing economic development is to have new development lessen the burden of providing public services to the existing community, that not overriding the R&R, at least to the extent of abatements rolling off, new valuation from TIF, new property from annexation, those kinds of things, could end up in a situation where you get the converse, where instead of reducing the benefit on existing taxpayers, you're actually increasing it.
So if we, as a city, see this as an unintended consequence, I would think, with your assistance, we could talk with the parties who drafted this and be ready the next legislative session to see if we can fix that problem. I mean, if the goal is to not override what they did, because that's unlikely, but we as a municipality won't be the only ones who see this, there has to be a fix, and I would think that if we're recognizing it early, we could at least participate in this to go fix that problem. I mean, I don't know what that is today, and we don't have to dig into it tonight, but I think we should be somewhat proactive moving forward and see if we can fix that at the state.
Very happy to help in that effort.
Thank you.
Councilmember Killer. Thank you. It's on now. Thank you.
Thank you. Along the lines of that question, I think we're lucky to have you, Jeff, in that it was a great presentation for one thing, but you're also talking to these other cities. Is there some language in the works on two levels? One, that cities. Here, I've got. Is there language in the works that people are agreeing to that could be in everybody's resolutions, which I hear us talking about putting them off, but we're supposed to vote on this next week. So we need it now that would allow that flexibility, because it sounds to me like it's not just TIF or economic development incentives, but any growth that generated new taxes, a new house on a block, a new anything, all the things we dream of and work hard on would put us in a bad position. So we need we'd been talking about language that just said we'd override but keep the mill levy the same. And if that's good enough, then good. I don't know what others are talking about. But I was wondering if there was some stock language that was evolving from those conversations, at least for this year, and B, whether there was already some intent to see if we could get the legislation amended before next year.
Yeah, I'll answer those backwards, council members. So I think folks are so busy paddling, just trying to meet the deadlines this year, that there's been a lot of conversation, sort of consistent with Councilmember Duncan's comment a second ago, that this seems like maybe something that deserves a legislative fix, and I'd agree with that. But I will say that I think most of my clients, informal poll, non-statistical poll, are proceeding to hold a hearing to override, and that ranges in reasoning from all the reasons we've talked about tonight to this sort of fear that they collect $1.27 in excess taxes and somehow have to reimburse that to 30,000 households in their businesses in their community, or something along those lines. But I will say, one community that we work with that for its weight is doing an extraordinary amount of economic development is Edgerton on the southwest corner of Johnson County, related to its intermodal development there. And their staff presented to their governing body sort of a general policy of your governing body, you're going to direct us to prepare a budget that assumes the following, that we're going to override for economic development, annexation, those types of things, so that it was very, very clear to the citizens of the community sort of what the starting point would be in the city budget. And I'm sure, as staff has mentioned here, and this was the case with the tax lid over the last 5 years, you can notice a higher number and always come lower through your budget discussions. But if you miss the window to have these hearings, you can't go backwards till next year. So again, I don't want to presume policy on your behalf. It was just important for us to let you know that that there's some oddities that could come out of a decision not to override R&R that you might not be contemplating, just because they're sort of strange little quirks of the way that municipal finance works here.
Thank you. I'm thinking so immediately about what we vote on next week, if there's some special way we need to word it. Lee,
I think the biggest thing is that we need to vote to have the hearing. I mean, that's basically what we need to vote. We don't have to decide whether we're going to exceed revenue neutral or not. We simply need to vote to have the hearing. That sets us on a course that we have a hearing between August 20th, I don't know the date, but anyway, in August, and then have to have a budget approved by September 20th, but in our case, it's September 13th, I believe. So it establishes and it gives us an extra month to work through the budget, but we simply need to go ahead and approve that option to have the hearing, and then delve into the budget and determine what we want the budget to be, make decisions whether we're going to capture all of the new valuation that's available, and establish what our rate would be.
Okay, so just to clarify, since in the past we had to, most recently the state set the lid. Prior to that, we voted early what the maximum would be. So that's not the case anymore. We're just saying exceed or not.
Right. And
okay.
we would, voting to have the hearing provides us the option. If we don't vote to have the hearing, that takes that option off the table to be able to capture the new valuation. And we are stuck with the dollars we had this year to provide the services to the citizens next year. And that's significantly less than what the new valuations create.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation, City Manager. I want to make sure we all understand that vote next week is to set a hearing so they can set us on a course. I appreciate all the information, Jeff, that you've provided to us. It's clearer than mud now, but it still is important for us to, I I think, understand the importance of this. Plus, I think the comments with regards to being ready and continuing to work towards an effort to fix the unintended consequences that SB 13 has brought to us is important for us to pursue. And count on Councilmember Duncan. He's got a lot of legislative experience there that, but also combined with Jeff, really, I think, put our city in a good place to pursue it. Any other further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. White, for your presentation. Excellent.
Thank you all.
Okay, we'll move on now to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
It is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Christina Valdivia Aquila granting Estano Ramos an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-158C concerning noise prohibitions. Here are minutes of the regular meeting of June 15, 2021. There is a list of cereal malt beverage applications that have been distributed, and staff is recommending approval.
The consent agenda has been read. What is the pleasure of the body? Have a motion to approve and a second. Excuse me?
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question on this?
Certainly.
Okay, can I make a comment about this resolution for the noise exception?
Please.
I just wanted to give the public a little bit of background on this.
Go ahead.
Since our Oakland community, our Mexican American community, has not had fiesta now due to COVID for the second year in a row, Destino Ramos came to me along with some other young volunteers to do a small event in Santa Fe Park, music and some vendors. These young guys are all volunteers putting this together, and I think it was trying to fill in a very small way that huge void that has been left by not having a Fiesta Mexicana this year. So when he came to me with this, there was full and wholehearted support for this, and I hope everybody votes yes on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Emerson.
So if I may ask a question then, Councilwoman, are you saying if we vote this down, the Fiesta will go on this year as scheduled?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to vote no then, but okay.
So we had a motion to approve and a second. Boom. Oh, I'm sorry. There's somebody up there?
I was just going to second it for the sake of discussion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Anyway, so we're under discussion now.
But we need to vote.
This is the consent agenda, so if it needs discussion, really, it's probably supposed to
It
be.
needs to be pulled. Point of order needs to be pulled, right?
I couldn't hear that.
It's being the consent agenda is supposed to be items that don't have any discussion. It's supposed to be voted through.
Okay. So are there others who wish to speak to the consent agenda? No? Okay. All right. So if we could proceed with the voting.
Councilmembers Emerson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
You have 9 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. We'll proceed now to action items number 5, if the clerk would read.
5 is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout relating to the establishment of a district planning committee to advise the governing body regarding the establishment of a business improvement district for the Noto Arts and Entertainment District.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We've had an interest expressed to us related to the establishment of a BID district, a business improvement district in the Noto area. And as it relates to that, this is the first step, looking at establishing the planning committee. And Tom Underwood is here to present some information regarding Noto's desire to establish this district. So, Tom?
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that you know that in the last several years, we have devoted quite a bit of energy and resources in beautifying and enhancing the Noto district. Not that it was not doing well prior to that, but certainly we've tried to take a focus of new parks and installing things that will make it a safer, a cleaner, a more pleasant environment for our visitors. Part of the challenges with doing that is that how do we do so with our very limited resources? So there was conversations with the district. We have a quarterly meeting where we invite businesses, Noto businesses, to come in, and the Noto organization will present different issues and areas of concern. And one of those concerns was like, well, we want to do these things. How do we do this? How do we support this? So last summer, at the support of some of the businesses in the district, we initiated a survey asking businesses, what's important to you? What do you find of value? Of the things that we do, what do you think are important? And what kind of a dollar value would you place on that? We were basically seeking overall level of importance and financial value. We did a Likert type scale, 5-point, from not important at all to very important. We had 20 respondents to this survey. So as you can see, we looked at those things. These are the percentages based upon the fairly and very important. So on a 5-point Likert type scale, these are the two ends, the two measures on the end. So things like dumping the trash out on the public streets, removing snow on the sidewalks, cleaning the district, all these kinds of things. These are a range of things that either we were trying to support or the businesses said they would just do on their own, and that wasn't always very successful. As people say, yes, I'll dump the trash container out in front of my store, and then you have trash containers overflowing. And so we notice that we're as strong as our weakest link in the district, right? So we wanted to know that if we wanted to do something, it doesn't do any good if we have our sidewalks cleaned in front, if our neighbors don't have the sidewalks cleaned. So we're looking at what are those things that we can do. So you can see here that these are some of the, again, on a Likert type scale, the overall respondents based upon what they found of value. Excuse me. So how do you support this? How do you pay for this? So we had some conversations in terms of looking at a business improvement district. All those things that were indicated are things that a business improvement district could support. I mean, they have to, doesn't mean it's for every business improvement district, but those are some things that a business improvement district could help support. So we emailed 35 businesses and they generally described, here's what a business improvement district is. That's an overview. Not saying how we should do it, but asked if this is something they could support in principle. In other words, would you like us to check into this further? We had 20 respondents, 19 said yes, one said they wanted more information. They're not going to commit to anything at this point. And part of this, we invited those 20, actually all 35, to be a part of a planning group. Let's put together at least the bones of what this might look like. Excuse me, planning committee consisted of John Bolander from Wheelbarrow, Pedro Concepcion from Onyx and Kit Solutions, Melissa Miller, Phoenix Finds Noto, Stacy Ogle, staff of the Noto organization, Steve Stutzman from Stutzman Leathers, and myself. So we looked at other bids that are in Kansas. Now, I mean, we could have done a nationwide, and I've looked at some of the other packages or programs that are out there, but we looked closely at other existing bids in Kansas that included downtown Topeka, Salina, Manhattan, and Wichita. We also talked about, well, what are the dynamics of Noto? You know, we're not downtown Topeka, we're not Salina. How are we different? How are we unique? So, I mean, I think some of them are obvious. You know, we're small art galleries, retail, restaurants, but we also have a significant number of service entities or trades that have been in Noto forever, far before any art gallery existed. So we can't ignore that. We have to acknowledge, you know, what businesses comprise Noto. But even those businesses that have been there for a long, long time, we're all small businesses. We don't have large corporations that comprise Noto. So we had to consider that. So here's what we had proposed. Basically, we look at business location, we look at kind of an ordinal type scale in terms of square footage, and we looked at types of business. So our tier one is basically what you would probably consider traditional Noto, those couple of blocks from Gordon to Norris, Quincy to Jackson. So look at those couple of blocks area. We looked at retail on the main floor, and we looked at retail that's distinct from the main floor. So, for example, there are several businesses in Noto where you may have the main shop on the ground floor, and you have a studio on the second floor of a couple hundred feet. Then again, you also have other businesses that, you know, first floor and basement and second floor, it's all the same business. So that was the distinction. And then we also looked at non-retail. We recognize that we need the support of the trades and services. We didn't classify them as a retail, and so we made a differential with that. And you see an ordinal type scale based upon clusters of square footage. We recommended tier 2, basically going north to Morse Street. So from Gordon to Morse. So thinking about where the Noto Arts Center is, where Redbud Park is, going to where the Cotton O'Neill Clinic is, Caw Valley Bank, those next couple of blocks. Slight differential on that rate. Candidly, there's not a lot of businesses there, but we thought we wanted to be more inclusive, and we've been working to be more inclusive in regards to what is Noto in that comprehensive area in the past several years. Finally, the third tier, we didn't put a dollar value to, but we see the potential. We think that Noto will see growth. We think that as we continue to be successful, we think that those boundaries of Noto should be considered to be pushed. And we wanted to, at least at this point, be more comprehensive in terms of, like, if we were to establish this, here is theoretically where this would go into. I thought it would be better to identify those areas now. But at this point, we would not recommend collecting any business improvement district assessments from those areas. So what we're requesting is a formal appointment of a Noto Business Improvement Planning Committee, and the people who have already been identified and have done some work would like to continue in that capacity. And that basically, my understanding of the bid process, that is our next step. We've done some initial, we've done some initial homework, and we've done some initial, here's kind of where we're thinking that this could go. And so then we just want the formal acknowledgement from the city to be able to move forward and to flesh out the plan in more detail. That's it in a nutshell. Any questions? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Questions from the body? Councilmember Hiller.
Just a clarification. Many of us are not familiar with the establishment of the bid downtown in Topeka and so on. Why is it that the city would need to vote on the formation of your bid committee?
My understanding is that just going through the process in terms of working with the city manager's office, that this was the next step in regards to this had to be acknowledged. So we pulled together our own ad hoc group. My understanding is that the next step is to be the formal establishment of a committee to maybe to review what work we've already done, and as well as there are some other duties that was laid out in regards to what this group would be doing.
Mary?
Mr. Underwood is correct. This is all laid out in statute. So the first step is you all determine how many members are going to be on the planning committee, and then the mayor will select.
And this is all because those dollars that Mr. Underwood displayed for us would actually get paid to the city and then paid back, and the city is kind of a middleman in this whole process?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, and that I understood that this one, the idea then is that this, our original bid didn't go through the city, but later did. So the idea is we would use this exact same model that we're currently using for downtown for Noto.
I'm sorry, if you're talking about the way that their assessment is downtown?
The way that it's relationship to the city, and then the way the assessment process works.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, Mr. Underwood, thank you. I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job over there in Noto. We went and got some graduation gifts at Stutzman Leathers a few weeks ago, and just everything over there is first class. So
thank you.
Great work. Now, for the questions. on your table, I wasn't sure what are these numbers? Are these yearly numbers, or are these dollar figures in the chart? Like if you have 1 to 500 square feet, it just says 100.
That would be an assessment based upon the square footage of that particular business.
And that's $100?
That's correct.
And that's a yearly or monthly?
That would be a yearly.
Okay. I guess my second question, maybe this is more for staff. If this gets formed, can this committee, basically, the majority of this committee, vote to impose this tax on businesses there, or is there an opportunity for businesses there to have a public vote?
Well, I can answer that question.
Mary?
Yes, the next step after committee is formed, they come back with a plan, and then you have a public hearing, and you consider comment from the business owners and from the general public, and then you decide whether you want to create the district and impose special assessment.
So people in the district then would have the chance to come to a public hearing and voice that we don't want it or we want it.
Yes, and in addition, even if you create a district, there is a protest period, and if a majority of business owners object within 45 days after you pass the ordinance is repealed. So there's a lot of input from the business owners who are going to have to pay the assessment.
Okay.
Which is exactly why we did our work in terms of saying, what's important to you? Do you support this in principle? And I didn't share that we did, based upon the recommendations of this small group, we did share this again at another district meeting. What do you think? Throw darts at it. And it was just a very positive response, which was at that point, only at that point, that I then turn it over to the city manager's office saying, I think that we have at least overall support. I'm not saying there won't be naysayers, but we have general support to at least move forward with this, to flesh out a more detailed plan.
Yeah, and as long as people who are going to be assessed it have an opportunity to come,
Absolutely.
I would hate for there ever to be, even if it's just us voting, for us to be able to impose a tax on people without them being able to speak up and say. So, no, and I really appreciate that. I guess my last question would be then, with the presentation we just saw, would this be considered part of the revenue neutral thing for the city?
Because it's not part of the general fund.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you for your presentation. I think you've done a great job since you got here. I pay my dues every year to support the cause. My wife's business does their part every once in a while, so we're very supportive. So take what I'm about to say as not a personal issue, but an institutional, let's call it a friendly suggestion.
Okay.
If it's only 6 people, which I understand, my suggestion, being someone who runs associations and does some of this, is my preference would be that one organization does not have more than one person on that committee. And I know you have, as it's currently comprised, 2 from NODO, and I sort of understand why. But I think that sometimes when you're only talking 6 people, the perception, whether it's fair or not, can be, well, 2 people loaded it, they had more influence, can lead to long-term issues. So I would prefer to see 6 different people represented there, or organizations represented there. Outside of that, I think it all looks great, and I think it's a good idea.
That certainly is a fair, I mean, honestly, it was, these were the staff that were working.
No, and I understand
all
that.
2 of us.
Right.
But with that said, I mean, I asked for volunteers, and these were the people that volunteered. I would be very comfortable with asking Stacy to not participate on that planning committee, so that's fine. That's a good.
So, like I said, I've run into that before, so I get to see that. Thank you.
Further questions from the council? Mr. Underwood, if in my mind, I'm trying to think, and you referenced, the boundaries in your presentation.
Yes.
So what typically people think about of NOTO is, North Kansas Avenue and maybe a block or 2 either way. And you had boundaries in there to the west of the Pica Boulevard and the east to the river.
I think on tier 3, when you're thinking about I think what I would recommend, or what I would suggest is, when I think about the potential of NOTO, I think where and how will it grow? And to a certain point, we've been somewhat landlocked in terms of those couple of blocks. Part of that is cultural, part of that is just historical, but I think it's an artificial boundary. And when I think about that potential of NOTO growth, I think that you're going to start, I believe that we're going to start seeing, vacant properties on adjacent blocks. It's like, oh, that'd be a great place for a small studio or a small business or a new restaurant or those kinds of things. If I think about other existing buildings now where there's currently maybe a trades business. If that business decides to, the person retires, whatever, are they going to sell that business lock, stock, or will that be a new vacancy? So we were thinking about the potential growth and expansion of the district.
I see your vision, and I understand that now, and I think that you're right, that the opportunity for that growth can come.
Right.
So I appreciate your presentation. Again, just checking to make sure everyone has had an opportunity to ask any questions I might. Okay, so with this resolution here, it's an action item. Require a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Valdivia Alcala. Do we have a second? Councilmember Hiller. Okay. Councilmember Hiller.
Just in case there was confusion from the discussion, if I understand correctly, what we're approving here is to establish a 6-person committee, not to establish at this juncture who's on it.
No.
So we're fine with just creating the structure for you. Thank you.
Okay. Will you call the vote?
Deputy Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmembers Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Lesser?
Yes.
Hiller?
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
And Emerson.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to action item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout temporarily suspending until September 8, 2021, governing body rules 3.1, meeting place, and 7.3B for voting.
City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tonight, we have before you a resolution that suspends 2 components of our governing body rules. They're primarily associated with the need to have our meeting in the Holiday Building as we begin the renovation of this building. So the meetings in July and August are planned to be at the Holiday Building in the conference room on the first floor. And so we need to suspend that rule where our regular meetings are located. We've always been able to have special meetings wherever they're designated, but it's clearly in our rules that regular meetings are to be here. The second item relates to the fact that we're able to change the presence and location where we take our vote. And in the past, that means that council members must be present in the chambers in order to be able to vote. And we've been allowing Zoom to continue, and if we're going to allow that during the same time frame while we're in a relocated location, have a desired need to approve suspending that rule as well. So that is the purpose for this request.
Thank you. Questions, Councilmember Ortiz? Oi.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Motion to approve. Is your second, Councilmember Emerson? Okay. Will you call the vote, please? I'm sorry. Councilmember Hiller?
I'd like to discuss this for a couple of minutes and
Okay.
propose an amendment. We have been extending, based on COVID, the ability for people, not only the governing body members, but the staff and the public, to Zoom, to participate in meetings or be officially present without being in the same room with the governing body. I think that, and we now have a different reason if there's going to be some construction, but we also don't know if the COVID threat we're hearing a lot, and so it could reemerge as well. Also in the past, so what we had before covered the council, the public, and covered committee meetings. It expired. So if we don't extend the ability to, for the committees to meet in a hybrid sense, and for the public to come virtually or live. I think it will be very confusing to the public for us to be Zooming and not them. I also am chairing 2 committees, and I know that one of them has 2 upcoming meetings where one of the members was planning to Zoom in. And if we don't extend this, that would be a violation of our rules. And so I think I'd like to discuss that a little bit. I know that along the way, we had talked about making some permanent changes to our rules rather than rolling back entirely to the way they were before. So my thought is, if we need to change some language as proposed here because of a change in location, fine, but that we could go ahead and simply add an amendment here that at line 31, after the text of the new one that we have, and pull over the section from the resolution that we've had before that provides, just say, be it further resolved, and that provides for the amendments for television coverage, public comment sign up, public comment on certain agenda items, the manner of voting, the quorum for committee meetings, and television coverage for committee meetings. Just lock, stock, and barrel, just extend that to September the 8th with this one, so that then we can consider all the pieces.
Councilmember Duncan.
I guess I'm confused. Does this not cover council committee meetings?
No, all it talks about is the full meetings and the governing body members only, the way I read it.
City Manager.
Mary's looking at that. I think we thought, and I thought that it did cover the committee meetings as well as it relates to being able to follow the same 2 issues related to voting and being able to be located using Zoom for committees as well. So, right.
Yeah, there's no requirement in the committee rules to have physical presence in order to vote. So committee meetings can still occur by Zoom, or I didn't see a need to.
But making that addition doesn't.
I mean,
no harm, no foul, right? I mean, covers us to ensure that it's
correct.
And then I was just going to give an update, piggyback off what you said, just so you know. What's today? Friday.
Last Friday.
That's right. The Policy and Finance Committee did pass out more permanent recommendations that had been sent back, brought here at one point, sent back. We will get those before September, so hopefully once we end suspending the rules, we can operate on those permanently. So that part is sort of been done, and hopefully in August we'll be able to have that discussion and work on those. So, so we're covered there, I think, past September. But you're right, we need to cover ourselves for that period. So
I just thought that no change, except the adding the location would be a little smoother for everyone concerned. So.
So do we have a motion to accept the amendment? More discussion?
Yes, I guess I had a question.
Can I call a point of order?
Please.
I'm sorry, Tony. We are discussing something. We need to make a motion and then approve it and get a second and then vote on it before we can have discussion. Is that correct, Mary?
Well, unless you're making a friendly amendment that everyone
exactly.
agrees
We
to,
just
but
keep going right into discussion,
We have
so
a
we
motion
need to.
and second.
We had a motion and a
It's
second.
on the floor.
Council member, we had a motion and a second, and Council Member Hiller then asked under discussion for a friendly amendment.
I didn't hear the second. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
I guess to the Councilmember Ortiz's point, though, Councilwoman Hiller made an amendment or suggested an amendment.
Right. Never
and I
a
think that's
second.
what she's saying. We haven't. I think Ms. Ortiz is correct. We haven't seconded that.
I suggested that we consider it, so I didn't make that motion. I was eager for some other feedback. I'm willing to make that motion, but I didn't.
I will.
Want me to make it? Okay.
Please.
Well, I move that we add after line 31 in the existing in the proposed resolution, the language be it further resolved that the following governing body rules are suspended through September 8, 2021. That's the same language that's used otherwise. And then the sections in line 31 through 37 of our existing ordinance, 7 different exemptions that we've been carrying before, be added to this, be carried forward as well.
And would you mind, I'm sorry, would you mind listing those?
They are Governing Body Rule 2.10, television coverage, Governing Body Rule 5.5B, public comment, sign up, Governing Body Rule 5.5C, public comment on specific agenda items, Governing Body Rule 5.5D, public comment in general. And I think just to describe that has to do with public being able to sign up, being able to speak, and also being able to just attend and be recognized. Governing Body Rule 7.3, manner of voting. Governing Body Rule 8.6, quorum for committee meetings. And Governing Body Rule 8.1 for television coverage of committee meetings.
Great, and I'd second that.
Okay, you have a motion and a second on that amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, Councilmember Ortiz.
I will withdraw, let me see. I will withdraw my motion. Do I need to withdraw my motion?
No?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I will accept the friendly amendment.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we don't need to,
Good.
okay.
All right. Thank
All right.
you.
All right. So we proceed now with the vote on the amendment?
No, because it's
Or
been
motion.
accepted
It's
as part of the
final.
motion.
Okay.
Yes.
So we proceed now with the vote to accept the change with the amendment. Okay. If you'll call the vote, please.
Okay, Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Boy. Okay, we move on now to the non-action items. Pardon? Oh, is it that time already? Oh, I guess so. Yes, typically we'll take a 10-minute break at 8 o'clock before we start our next item of discussion on the 2022 operating budget. So, yes, Councilmember Ortiz.
Deputy Mayor, I'd like to know if we can, if the people are available, if we can move up public comment before the budget. If we can move that on the agenda so that way we can get that out of the way. Sometimes our budget goes longer than expected, and that way we can just get them out of the way and rolling. I'd make that motion if they're available.
You made that as a motion?
I
Okay.
sure will.
And there's a second from Councilmember Hiller. And we have, I think from my list, 1, 2, 3, 4 people. I think they're all in the gallery.
And Deputy Mayor, I guess a point of order, and I'm not opposed to this at all, but do we need to suspend the rules to do this, or is this simply?
Well, public comment generally follows right after all of the business is done, so you would have to suspend the rule to allow it to occur now. Is that what the pleasure is?
After the break.
Okay, or after the break, sure. You want to vote to suspend the rule regarding public comment?
Yes.
Okay, 7 votes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Doesn't the mayor get to, move the agenda around as needed, or do we have to suspend the rules?
No, we have to suspend the rules.
Don't tell me what I want to hear, Mary. I'll make a motion to suspend the rules so we can get these people out of the chamber.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilmember Emerson to suspend the rules to move public comment after the 8 o'clock or break. Okay. We call the vote, please.
Okay, Councilmember Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
I would vote no, but I'm not going to because Mary didn't tell me what I wanted to hear.
Emerson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Padilla,
Yes, please.
and Councilmember Nager.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. So we'll take our 10-minute break. It's 8:05 by my watch, so we'll resume at 8:15. We're on break. Boy. Okay. Thank you. So we've made a motion and approved to move our public comments ahead. So we have 4 people signed up for public comment. Mr. John Williams.
Good evening, council members.
Good evening.
My name is John Williams, and I live at 1190 Southwest Lane Street. And somebody complained about a fence. I don't know who it was exactly, but the city wants me to take it down to 4 foot. It's been 6 foot since it's been there. And I just wonder why. I have some pictures this time I'd like for you to look at. Please. Thank you. And, it just seems kind of silly because we live in a very, very crime-rated area. It's really bad. We had like 4 murders, and it makes me nervous, to tell you the truth. But to make a long story short, that fence protects me, protects my dogs, because they can climb over the fence, really. And that protects me and it makes everybody safe, the people safe. Kids like to, play with dogs, tease them and stuff. People go down the alley, the street, but I just don't see why we need to change it. Please, like you consider, just to let it go. It's not hurting anybody. I mean, it's just been there for so long. I mean, I can go on and on and on. But I'm just trying to let you know what's going on. I'd like for you to give me an opinion, to say, hey, Mr. Williams, the fence is good, let it go, please. Now, the city is going to fine me $500 a day if I don't lower it. I got a certain time, like 30 days, which I'm going to have to file an appeal with the zoning people to have it appealed. Hold on. Okay. Thank you for your time. Like this, it's the Board of Zoning Appeals. It's going to cost $130 to appeal this. I'm going to talk to you about it right now. So we have to go through with this appeal, which I will do. Like I say, you can just say right now, if you got the power and the means to say, hey, let's just let this go. Because if you was in my shoes and you lived in a crime area, the fence has been protecting me for a very long time. And, as I say, you can see everything. I keep a very, very nice yard, like Mrs. Heller, and I take pride in myself, I even go beyond. I could, the yard next to me and the other yard, I can see if it was a real problem, it would be something that you consider something bad about it. But the bottom line is that it's a real nice fence. And I got pictures of 30 fences around this town. Thank you. 30 pictures around this town with people who got fences like mine. And then all of a sudden, I get singled out. I'm 61 years old. It makes me feel good. I can go on. It makes me safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I will ask Mr. Williams if you would, before you leave, contact our chief of staff?
I talked to Mr. Coppin, yes, sir. We have talked.
You have some visit with him already?
Yeah, I've had conversation with Mr. Williams, and I've had 2 conversations with the city prosecutor, and I advised him to go ahead and set up the Court of Appeals to give us more time.
Okay.
I am working with the city prosecutor on this.
Okay.
We'll just see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment, Mr. Williams. Council member?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Williams, I guess, we don't normally talk back
Yeah.
and forth during comments, so that's all. I'm just gonna ask staff. Does he have to appeal it? $130?
Yes, sir, he does at this point, because there was a complaint filed, and then the complaint was filed up on, and the case was filed. So at this point, I suppose he doesn't have to, but to make sure he does not get into any more
$500 fine.
to make things worse. So I advised him to go ahead and set up the appeals while I'm working on this on the backside.
I would be glad to pay the $130.
I just want to get it resolved, sir.
What's that?
I just want to get it resolved.
I understand if you have to pay $130.
Well, I'll appeal it, you know.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Councilmember Hiller and then Councilmember Valdivia Alcala.
Oh, just for everybody to know, if you could tell us how many years that fence has been installed, how long ago it was put in, and how many steps you've gone through with the city, but back to when it was installed, whether there were fence permits required at that time.
Well, it's supposed to be grandfathered in. That's
Okay.
just been there for like 26 years, 94, 95. I mean, something like, it's been a long, long time.
Just checking.
All right.
Councilmember?
I'm almost speechless to this.
Well,
As I look at staff right here, I know I'm not supposed to engage. Because for the level of different issues that we have with code and zoning and trying to get things accomplished and in a year and a half and things still aren't happening or rolling, and in areas where we have dogs running all over the place because somebody doesn't have the proper fencing, where a pit bull can just and he's over a fence and we can't get anything to happen because we're short animal control officers. And then you have a person who has a beautiful yard,
thank you very much.
was grandfathered in, is protecting himself, and somebody decides to put a complaint against him, and it rolls through so fast that now he's getting this kind of absurd charge. Something is not working in the system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I think that council members have made comment without directly engaging with you, and you have some support.
Okay, thank you, sir. We got a lot to worry about. The corona's nothing nice. That's a whole different thing. You know, we got a lot more to worry about than fences. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Mr. Ed Fitzpatrick.
Good evening. My name is Edward Fitzpatrick. I live at 2348 Southeast Crestwater Drive. My house was the last house in the city before you annexed the Lakeshore Estates or the area over by Lake Shawnee. That is not my problem or your problem. My problem is the city meter. You came out and installed a brand new, supposedly, meters in the area. And for some reason, I passed out information there that I received a bill in last April for 6,563 gallons of water consumption. I am a single man at the residence. I have a sprinkler system. It was not turned on. I give you the information that I had a landscape company come out and check on it. They found that my controller was not working, so I could not turn my sprinkler system on. I called the city. The city's answer is, it's your sprinkler system. I have to explain to the lady, no, it's not my sprinkler system. It's your toilet. No, it's not my toilet. You got a faucet running, dripping. No, I do not. So this went on, and finally, today, about 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a call from the city saying that they want to do something about the situation. And I'm not happy with the situation, but I accepted the situation. And I'm just letting you know, your meters, or whoever reads the meters and punches in the numbers, I did not use 6,560 some gallons of water in April of this year. And I'm just letting you know that was the problem. So the problem is solved as far as the city goes, and I go. But I think you need to look into your meter situation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have Aaron K.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I have a simple yet hard request. I'm asking Joel Campbell to be banned from running for city council. Now, I do not make this request lightly, and I understand the gravity of what I'm about to ask, but please allow me to explain. We, the people, those are the first 3 words that are written in the preamble to the Constitution, and there's a reason for that. The power and legitimacy of our government is derived from the people. Our representative democracy allows anyone to run for office, and a true representative democracy allows all voices to be heard. Therefore, we should allow anyone to run for office, and by banning people to run for office, you not only ban our legitimacy, but you also harm our representation. On January 6th, there's a group of protesters that attacked Congress as they were counting the vote. Among those members was a group called the Proud Boys. They are considered by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group, and they did more than just damage doors and windows. Those can easily be replaced and repaired. They attacked our values. They attacked our idea of a peaceful transition of power and the idea that all voices can be heard during a free election. Joel Campbell, according to NPR, has said that he does not plan on removing or covering up the tattoo that he got while he was a part of that organization. He has also said that he someday might plan on going back to that hate group. He has not disavowed himself from that group. By banning Joe Campbell from running for city council, you are not silencing his voice. You are securing the blessings of liberty by allowing all those that he and his hate group were trying to suppress to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. And Mr. Ledbetter.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Council Lady Ortiz, for moving us up. I was going to speak during the budget, but one of those presentations just went on and on and on. I wish we sometimes could put those talk limits on some of the consultants that we hire. But what I want to talk about is contracting the need to have council approval, in my opinion, of our contracts. And last year, we had signed by the manager $71 million worth of contracts. Now, the ordinance allows him to do that without council approval. It says he could get council approval, but he doesn't have to. The year before, it was $78 million. I have not gone and looked at how many years we've had these numbers escalating, but I'll tell you that's basically 25% of the budgets. And to tell you what the county commission does across the street, even though we're not that government, as I was reminded by one of our legal eagles, I said, well, I can take advice from smart people anywhere, especially if it's free. So I know that they, at the county commission, they have a $100 million budget, which is about 30 years, and they approve every single contract, $1,000, whatever. Every single contract has to go through those county commissioners. And I like that form of government in that I like the accountability. I supported very adamantly this form of government. I have not found it to be that popular with most citizens over the years. It's kind of 50-50, back and forth. But because I was trained in this kind of a program at KU, I, honest to God, thought this has got to be the best government on earth if we just get it. And I've been sorely disappointed the last couple of years. It feels like the citizens just don't have a lot of voice anymore. We used to. And even under the strong mayor form of government, which I at one point thought was a bad form of government, we were getting our pipes fixed in neighborhoods. They were, I think they did 100 miles in just 4 years, a couple decades ago. So obviously something was working. That's not working now. I've looked at our streets. I'm not happy with them. And even though we've got a new public works director, and I'm going to give him some time, I'll give anybody 3 months. I wouldn't give him 3.5 years. But I would, but I expect improvement. And I'm starting to see some, but we'll see where that goes, okay? I'll hold my opinion on that. I've been sorely disappointed with code enforcement. We've still got the burned out White Lakes Mall that has not been leveled. I complained about that 6 years ago, and it's been complained about by a lot more people than me. And so I just see this slow move, this inability to move things fast, and yet I believe we definitely need to be looking at all the contracts for over $50,000 that are asked to be signed by the city manager. I'm not talking about just consulting. And some of those I would never sign because I've read some of them. But I think they're way too expensive, especially for what we got. I expect staff to do a lot more, legal and planning and some of these other staffs. I expect them to do a lot more of that work. But these are my opinions. They kind of tie in with budgets. I very much support moving forward with an ordinance to get these contracts under council control and their approval. And thank you for your time, and thanks for moving us up. And so I'm not going to stick around for the budget part of discussion, all right? But I will send an email. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. Since we've moved that up, and we can go now to our non-action items. 6A, discussion of the 2022 operating budget. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So tonight begins the operating budget process for our government. The budget that I've presented is a budget that outlines basically continuing the current services that we have, basically current staffing other than a couple of changes. It has does incorporate us capturing all of the new valuation that we would receive, in other words, to go above revenue neutral. If the governing body were to choose not to go above revenue neutral, then we would have to make changes to this budget in order to lower, either finding other revenue sources or making expense reductions. So tonight is a simple overview I'll ask Steve Wade to come forward. Steve is going to go through a PowerPoint that gives you a general outline of the budget, and then obviously July 10th, we have the budget workshop where we'll go into much more detail on the components of each department, or at least a number of them on that day, depending on time. And so more to come, but this is the start of the process. Steve?
Good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor, council members, city manager, chief of staff. In advance of Saturday's work session, we are presenting an overview of the fiscal year 2022 budget. For your constituents, this budget book is online at topeka.org/finance/budget. As you know, the city's budget runs from January 1 through December 31. We've talked a lot tonight about Senate Bill 13 and House Resolution 2104. You'll be presented next week with the opportunity for a vote. If you vote to hold a public hearing, that will move a hearing and the budget to September. If you vote to not hold a public hearing next week, the budget will be presented to you for adoption in August. The purpose of the budget document are three things. First, it serves as a planning document for revenue and expense estimation, as we're required by the state to present a balanced budget. Second, the budget book establishes priorities by identifying what services to provide and at what levels. And finally, the budget sets policy by deciding how to allocate those funds among programs. Earlier this year, you voted to adopt 5 priorities: public safety, neighborhood development, infrastructure, fiscal sustainability, and quality of life. You'll find in the budget book us adhering to that mandate. There are 2 types of accounting activities in local government budgeting. First is government activities. Examples include the general fund and special revenue items such as the Save Our Streets sales tax fund. Second are enterprise activities. These activities are self-funded and operate similar to private business. This includes water and parking. Often we talk about the general fund when discussing the operational budget. Historically, it gets the majority of the attention, but tonight I want to present the budget in its entirety. Proposed is a $339 million budget for 2022. 2/3 of the revenue come from 3 places: user fees, sales tax, and property tax. On the expense side, personnel and contractual services each make up about 1/3 of the total expense. When we talk about the general fund, you'll notice a significant shift in these ratios as the utilities department and construction drives much of the contractual services category. This slide shows expenses by fund, with the general fund and enterprise funds accounting for nearly 60% of the total expense. When we look at the general fund, the 5 priorities adopted by the governing body are budgeted to be spent according to this pie chart. Sorry, I'm not talking very well. Public safety is 77% of total expenses, with infrastructure the next highest at 9%. Remember, this is general fund only, and it comprises about 30% of the total operating budget. The general fund proposed expenses are about 2.2% over fiscal year 21. Earlier, I noted the shift in category ratios in the general fund. While personnel expenses are about 1/3 of the overall budget, this slide demonstrates some of the challenges in balancing the general fund. Using public safety as an example, personnel is 87% of expenses. So public safety, which makes up 77% of the general fund budget, has only 13% of non-personnel spending. As you will see Saturday, most departments are very similar to this slide. As personnel expenses grow each year as per contract, the 13% gets squeezed to make up the difference. When compared to fiscal year 21, proposed budget personnel expenses increased only 0.2%. The year-over-year growth in personnel is lower than prior year because of the $1.3 million of personnel costs eliminated because of the zoo transformation. That leads me to this slide, and it shows some of the difficult decisions facing each of you. The proposed budget is the 9th consecutive budget without a mill levy increase. One of the ways you have chosen to pay for salary increases, which are essentially fixed by a negotiated contract, is by capturing the natural growth rate caused by property valuation increases. The city has captured additional property tax dollars each year, but has been able to hold the overall mill levy flat. This year, because of Senate Bill 13 and House Resolution 2104, the governing body must now vote to allow the city's budgeted property tax revenue to capture tax-based growth. Again, there's the URL for the budget that's online. The city manager, I wanted to take a second and express a personal note of thanks to Jessica Lamandola. Jessica, it takes a lot of people from a lot of departments to build a budget, but Jessica served as a mentor and a guide to a very new budget staff in putting this one together, so her help is greatly appreciated. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions from the council? Councilmember Hiller.
I do not have a question. I just want to compliment you. I think that the book is really good and thorough. I think this presentation was a good overview of what we're really looking at all together. It's something we struggled with as a city in the past, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the city manager will join me in saying there's two guys in the back who have worked very hard to help build this.
Thank you, too.
Additional comments from the council? I would echo your sentiments as well. Since coming on the council, I've seen a change in how we look at the budget and how it's been addressed. And I think a very incremental and clear way so that it's easy to follow rather than trying to digest it all in one big lump. So I think that's important. So compliments to the city manager and staff, Steve, and everyone that's been working on this to get us to where we are now.
Thank you. Our team certainly stands ready to for any one-on-one conversations that might be needed.
Hey, Councilmember Ortiz.
Thanks for saying that, Steve. I've been around here for a little bit. I've been cleaning out my office and I found some old budget books. Would you like them?
Yes, ma'am.
They're pretty thick. They're pretty thick. I'm gonna bring you one to show you what we used to go through. They were rather scary, so that will be my prize to you this year. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any further comments from the council? Thank you, Steve, for your presentation. I appreciate it. Okay, we will move, since we don't have public comment, we can move on to announcements.
As a reminder, July 10th, we have a budget hearing at the Holiday Building from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then on the 13th, it will also begin when we start having the council meetings or governing body meetings at the Holiday Building also. So, let's see, on the 13th, we have one board appointment. We have one presentation from the Topeka VA Medical Center. Action items include the resolution to notify the clerk for the R&R. We also have a resolution for the 8 Iron Therapy for a conditional use permit. And then we have a final plat for Horseshoe Bend subdivision number 6 and another one for number 7. And then continue the discussion on the budget for non-action items.
Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The most important thing I want to cover tonight is, as far as information for the public, is that there is a HUD mortgage relief program that is set to expire July 31st, 2021. It affects individuals that have an FHA mortgage. They can ask for assistance to pay their mortgage because of through this program. It is a forbearance on your mortgage payments, and the program's going to expire July 31st. So if you have an FHA mortgage, anyone out there, please look into that. We'll have information. There's a press release that will be going out tomorrow that will outline the details. But in simple ways, it's 1-800-CALL-FHA if you would like to ask some questions or find out more details as it relates to your FHA loan. The city continues its COVID Basic Needs Program. We're getting close to nearing actually use of all of that funding. We'll be looking at adding some additional funding in order to keep the mortgage program going. We have other funds from another program that will help with rental assistance and utility assistance. And so we're kind of modifying how we're going with that, but individuals that have FHA need to check into it. Next comment I have is I want to recognize Jessica Lamandola and Lisa Robertson for all of the work that they've done in their tenure with the city. They leave us at the end of the week to move on to other options in their employment. We're very thankful for the things that they've done. They've been important parts, even with the short time that they've been here, for us and our success. We do have 2 exec sessions tonight, so we'll make sure we don't adjourn. We do have 2 exec sessions tonight. Lisa was gone today, so there was no email related to it. But just so you know, we need to discuss labor negotiation issues.
Thank you, City Manager. Christina?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Several announcements tonight. The Oakland Neighborhood Cleanup is happening July 10th from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Folks that follow the Oakland Facebook page should be able to get more information about it. Also on July 10th at 10 a.m. until I think it is 1, there will be the ribbon cutting at Santa Fe Park for the bathroom mural that was done by 3 wonderful Latino artists after the terrible hate graffiti that occurred last summer. So Shawnee County Parks and Recreation will be putting on that event. I will be speaking briefly, so I'm just going to be a tad late to the budget meeting, but there will be games and music for families after the ribbon cutting and speaking by various people. Also on July 11th, the next day, from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Santa Fe Park, the event that we all approved tonight, the Fiesta event, which is going to be a very small, shortened event to give people some music and some time together with that Latino flair that we so miss with Fiesta Mexicana. Also, I wanted to express my deep support for the BCG-TML Local 218 union and striking workers at Frito-Lay. I want to tell these union workers that are in strike, stay strong and united, because you understand more than anyone that unions are the backbone of worker rights across this country. Also wanted to speak briefly on Lou McGinnis. Last week, Councilman Lesser talked about there was an apartment incident or lack of air conditioning that was happening to a tenant that both Councilman Lesser and myself got pretty deeply involved in, that actually took a number of days to repair when there was quite a bit of heat going on. There were children, minor children in the household, one suffering from heat-related seizures. She had the tendency to have that issue. but both him and I got involved, and it took quite a long time for basic repairs to be made. There was a story that you all probably saw in the Capital Journal. But Lou McGinnis is a mega apartment property owner in a multi-state area. It was one of his properties that council people worked, that's Councilman Lesser and myself, to get basic air conditioning fixed. It took us days and multiple calls. Many have read the Capital Journal article, and upon this, and actually before this, I Googled Mr. McGinnis and his family. He appears, according to these articles, to leave a trail of disrepair and past due property tax trail in multiple states, including Kansas and in Topeka as well. As we talk about affordable housing, equity in housing, and I would dare say justice and the human right of safe housing, we need to look at owners like Mr. McGinnis and see how and why they end up infecting our cities so much. Also, I just want to talk very briefly. Extremely troubled and frustrated, as are a number of neighbors in Oakland, about the continued running rampant of a handful of often homeless individuals that, for all indications, have refused help and services that are provided to them and would rather run the streets of Oakland, defecating on property owners' private property, in their bushes, along their fence line, stopping in the middle of stopping traffic while they decide to yell and scream and wave and do all types of inane things, leaving drug paraphernalia strewn along residents' property, starting fires in alleys that are often not bad enough to warrant any kind of action that can have any long-lasting repercussions. I do want to say very strongly, this is not a commentary on the vast majority of homeless trying to do the best they can in breaking the cycles that leave their lives and those of their families in despair. The individuals I speak of are a number of less than 5 males, but seem to know how to work the system and our court system of both the city and the county, because both the city and county appear to be aware of the issues, as is code enforcement and as is Topeka Police Department. Yet for the year and a half I have been on council, little has changed. There has been some change, but overall little has changed. The feel is one of one step forward and continued steps back. And I will continue to bring this up because it continues to be a point of frustration, of irritation, of helplessness in the Oakland community when these handful of individuals in their own small way are terrorizing a neighborhood where children do not go out to play, where people do not feel that they have the quality of life like some of the other sides of town have. And there is a deep frustration, and I'll keep bringing it up here to council until we can find some kind of answers to it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First, I want to say that Neil wanted me to let everyone know that he needed to go lay down, which is understandable. Second, I wanted to congratulate, or actually, I wanted not to congratulate. I wanted to send condolences to Tommy Green's mother, Miss Green, who's been a East Topeka resident for over 55 years. And so if you're grassroots and you're from East Topeka, you will know Miss Green and Tommy Green, some of the loveliest people you'll ever meet. And so she was buried 2 Saturdays ago, and I wanted to send condolences out. I also want to thank all the residents that picked up their fireworks. And to those that haven't, I'm looking for you to do so. That's just the #1 complaint that we receive all the time is the fireworks, the garbage that's left behind. And it's just kind of crazy how we just don't take the initiative to get it cleaned up. There'll be a basketball camp at Chase starting on Monday. Excited for the kids to have over 100 participants, to have something positive to do, and also that it's free. And last but not least, I attended, was able to attend the air show, which was great. And my 9-year-old grandson told the Army that he was going to join them after he sat in their helicopter. And he has also started his Christmas list, and he now wants a plane for Christmas. So I gave him Henderson Construction's address, and I told him that's where Santa will be this year. So he should be sending a letter to him shortly. But I guess when you take kids to see big toys, that's what they want. Those boys, they never outgrow that. Spencer, you better keep yours at home. You got 2. So anyway, it just some wonderful time off. It's been great going door to door, seeing all the potholes, and seeing all the shrubs. So anyway, just wanted everybody to know that there's still time to get your firework mess cleaned up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Emerson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, Councilwoman Ortiz, when I get that request from your grandson, I think what I'll send him back is something along the lines of, if your grandmother really loved you, she would buy you that plane.
Throw it back at him.
Now, it was a fantastic air show, and I want to thank Brooks Pettit from Various Aviation. My gosh, the amount of work that he almost single-handed, well, that's not true. He had a lot of help, but he did a ton of the work himself, and just a spectacular air show. Mr. Padilla and I went to the performers dinner on Saturday night. Yeah, it was Saturday night. And we met the people around from around the country, and one of the things they said, Brooks did this huge catered meal for all these people. And they said, we've been to a lot, all these people said we've been to a lot of shows, we're on the circuit, but very few places do something that's nice for us. And they just couldn't get over how nice everything was in Topeka and what a great city. So that's really a lot to do with Brooks and as well as the team. And I'd also like to thank, of course, our great Air National Guard, the 190th and the Kansas Army National Guard, because most of the planes out there were military that they arranged to bring in. So we couldn't have done it without them. And lastly, the local sponsors, especially the title sponsor, Core First. Just a great weekend for Topeka, and maybe the deputy mayor will say something about the concert, but I'll let him.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I would echo that was a highly anticipated event, and it didn't disappoint anyone. Everybody that I talked to who were able to either get to the event itself or were parked nearby to watch the planes as they did their maneuvers. And the thing I really liked was getting the chance to meet some of those pilots. Young, very intelligent and committed people to their craft and to their service. And I know that that if we have it again next year, which I hope that is in the plans, that those crowds will get even bigger. I mean, and the number of families and kids that were out there, that was really enjoyable to see, because like you said, those kids were climbing all over, and Ortiz has got her work cut out for her trying to get that taken care of. The Stampede as well brought a lot of activity to our community, and to my ears, I have not heard any real complaints about the facilities or the accommodations or the food or anything. Even with the little bit of weather that we had, people just did not give up on that Stampede. They wanted it to happen, and the crowds were there, and they really had an enjoyable time. There was just so much going on in that week, it was hard to pick where you wanted to go. And myself, this last weekend, the day before the 4th, I was invited to go out to Avondale East for the Scent fireworks display. And I have to tell you, those people put on a show. They had 8 food trucks out there, and the show rivaled anything I've seen in Topeka, to be honest with you. They had a sponsor that took care of the expenses, and 5% of everything that was sold there by the vendors went back to sent into the community. It goes right back into that neighborhood. So Pastor Sublett and his team has really put on an excellent event that the community there really enjoyed and took part of. As I walked up there were a lot of people already in the fields, and they had their blankets and chairs and everything else laid out. But what was really funny to watch was all around that area, cars were parked and a lot of trucks, and everybody was tailgating. They were laying in the back of the pickups and sitting up watching the fireworks and grabbing food and picnicking. And it was just really an enjoyable place to be. And I had a daughter-in-law who came in to Topeka to visit, and we took her there. She's totally unfamiliar with the Highcrest community, and it just blew her away to see that. She goes, I don't see this kind of a community network or a neighborhood pride event like this in Kansas City. She said, you guys really have something going on here. So there are a lot of good things happening in the city. So let's focus on the good things and also help with the things that still need assistance and change, so that everybody has that opportunity to enjoy the good things about the city. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. And Councilmember Nager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm really glad that we're bringing attention to all of the wonderful things that have been happening in Topeka and that are happening in Topeka, because I was at PT's at Wheatfields, and there was a Washburn alum, and I'm not saying that this is all Washburn alums, but he asked the baristas, what is there to do in Topeka? And then he complained about how there was nothing to do on Stampede Week when he was sitting in a coffee shop next to a wonderful new restaurant and another wonderful new restaurant and the great movie theater that we finally got to go back to. And he was very lucky that my partner was there to hold me back because I was about to blow, because there are so many wonderful things happening in Topeka. Had a great time during Stampede weekend, and although I didn't go to the actual country Stampede, I went to some of the different events with the live music, including at the Happy Bassett Barrel House that is down on Topeka Boulevard. And I know that there's also a lot of initiatives going into working on reviving that area, some in particular led by our very own deputy mayor. So I'm very grateful for the service that people do on the council and outside of it. Spent some time in Noto and got some special Topeka flag earrings from Piccadilly. Found out that Round Table Bookstore is celebrating their 2nd anniversary this Saturday from 10 to 4, I believe. So show yourself some shelf love and go in there and pick up some new books. Hey, they have books of that. I mean, not books, they have t-shirts. I didn't come up with that. You can get all you want, Emerson. But I also wanted to go ahead and celebrate. This was the 50th anniversary of the Collins Park 4th of July Parade. And that has been a very special tradition, bringing together a wonderful community, not only in Collins Park, but with the surrounding neighborhoods. I know that we in Westboro do build our day around it. And so it was very exciting to see that continue on. I only have one sign thing today. But this is important. If it is getting hot, and air conditioning is something that to keep us all safe and healthy that we need. And so if you are having any problems with making financial arrangements or making your financial situation work with your bills, please do reach out to Evergy. You can go to this website, evergy.com/manage-account/billing/financial help. Or the customer service number, I missed up a little bit, sorry, 1-800-383-1183. Sorry. You can find it online, but please call. Please make sure that you are safe in this almost hellish weather and keep your pets inside. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for the show and tell. I love it. Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a few things this evening. Just reiterate what the clerk reminded everybody. Please tune in on Saturday morning for our riveting 4-hour conversation on the budget. I know it'll be great for all of us, but I do encourage citizens and remind them that that's sort of the real start of that process. And as always, if you have ideas, suggestions, you just got to let us know. A big thank you to a lot of police and fire who, we do have a lot of parades across this city. We have one over in Sherwood Park. And some of those individuals, firefighters and police, take extra time to come out, bring equipment, participate in those so that kids can climb on trucks and look in cars and interact with the policemen and the firefighters, police officers. So just to thank you for the extra time they took to be involved in all those various parades across the city. I know it doesn't seem like it, but we have a primary election in less than 30 days. There are 2 primaries, I believe. One is for mayor and one is for a city council race. So just a reminder to everybody out there that go vote. It's coming up, and please pay attention and go to the polls on August 4th. That sounds right. 3rd, August 3rd. Geez, don't go August 4th. I'm not trying to play that game. August 3rd. Good Lord. I do want to say, I guess, good news, sort of. I'm glad. A few months ago, there was a senior living facility that was being constructed out on 2700 block of 3rd Street, and suddenly they just stopped construction. And I know Councilmember Hiller and I started hammering staff, oh my gosh, what is going on? Are they going to come back? And staff worked hard to get that. I made a few calls to harass them to say, what are you doing? You can't just leave this giant half-finished project. And so the good news is they have announced that they will continue that project again and actually finish it. So good news that's going to be completed here very soon, or at least eventually, and not be left abandoned over in 3rd Street. So thank you to all the developers there for getting that done. My last thing is, we are moving past, to some degree, COVID. I mean, I got on an airplane this past weekend and I went to Las Vegas and, as I've told people, tested my vaccine and enjoyed my time and went to a meeting. So I am not advocating rollbacks. Here's what I do know, though, is that only just over 40% of individuals in Shawnee County have been vaccinated, and that nearly every death in the state of Kansas and current hospitalization is individuals who have not been vaccinated. If that doesn't tell you something, those of you who are still reticent about getting it as the Delta variant sweeps across this country, all I can do once again is please tell you, please go get the vaccine. It'll be okay, I promise, and I promise you will be much safer with it than without it as to what could or could not come down the pike here in the next few months. So I will continue to encourage people to get their vaccine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Hiller. Oh, Mikey, I'm sorry. Councilmember Lesser. I missed you with that beard. You were in disguise.
Just a couple of quick things. I recently read a book by Matthew McConaughey, Mr. All Right, All Right, All Right. And a lot of people don't know he actually is an investor in the Evel Knievel Museum. But anyway, in his book, he talks about don't go looking for drama. It will find you. So don't create your own drama. So the last couple of weeks have been, as Councilwoman Valdivia Acula talked about, got a lot of calls after that. And I want to just say, throughout that process, working with John Chardine and Mike Haugen of Code, those guys do a really good job. Mike was gone. I worked with John on about 4 things. He was professional. He was responsive. I just want to say thanks to him for his work as well. The last couple of weeks, Chief Wheels, I've been bugging him a lot, and he has been very responsive as well. So I want to thank him for all his help on the issues that my constituents have been bringing to my attention. So, Mr. Ledbetter brings up lots of good points. I really do believe that. One thing I don't agree with him is I think we have a great team over there at Code Compliance, and they work hard, and they're handcuffed by laws, and we just need more staff, you know. But the guys over there work their butt off, and I think do a good job. Finally, the last thing I want to say is I want to jump on the Brooksy Pettit bandwagon. Brooks put on a great, Brooks and everybody involved over there. Air show was fantastic. It was great. I got to take a friend of mine and his 84-year-old father who flew in the Korean War, and got to see some of the aircrafts that he was part of. It was just pretty cool to see. And what I did though ask Brooksy was, I said, hey, you did a great job. Looking forward to this next year. I said, you going to do it? And his comment was, it depends on how much money I lose. When I say that, I mean that to say that's an investment that he's put into our community to bring that here, that he's willing to lose some money to get it started this first year, so we can see all the excitement and the great thing that it is, because it's been over 20 years since we had something here. And haven't talked to him since then. I hope he broke even. It's people like him, as Tony was talking about, that, and their sponsors that are helping us to continue this momentum that we have rolling here right now. And so if you see Brooks, thank him and encourage him that let's keep this thing going. So that's all I have. 2 executive sessions, so I'll stop right now.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, just to kind of wrap up, I too think that the air show and having the Stampede here were just wonderful. So I'll echo that, but take time out to offer kudos to the water department who got that dang water main fixed on and MCON. That's right, across Topeka Boulevard in record, unbelievable time, so that the traffic could still continue. I actually had somebody who complained that it was a little bumpy. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it, okay? But kudos to city staff and private contractors that did the almost impossible and got that fixed so that people could travel. I too am so impressed with what Scent has done, and just want to do a shout out across the board to city manager and others who are involved. That's the kind of thing that the Neighborhood Initiatives group that I worked with was envisioning, that getting every neighborhood in the community, as you're working with your Oakland groups too, to think of what they want and what makes a difference in the neighborhood. Not just infrastructure, not just a program, but instead looking at what's going to make a neighborhood thrive. And so it's exciting to see that. They're wonderful role models for all of us, and I wish them well and everything that they're doing. They're great, a great ad. People mentioned Noto. I guess it was Music Week here last week too, but I was in Noto for First Friday, and there was music in 5 different venues. I mean, think about that. Go back 10 years, go back 5 years. That's just amazing to see all that activity, and that was just one sector. Councilwoman Nager mentioned some of the other venues that were going as well. Just kind of pinch yourself days, and it's in a really good way. I too wanted to do a shout out to the police department. I've talked about community policing a lot. My neighborhoods are so happy to have it back. We're still kind of restarting the wheel, but already one of mine that's had chronic, just petty crime going on, and people up and down the streets have set a date. They've already been in touch and met their officer, and she's willing to come. They're going to have a yard get together, and those kinds of starts, aside from just incidents, make a lot of difference to us in Central. And so thanks, and it's starting to work. Wanted to offer shout outs both to Jessica Lamondola and Lisa Robertson for their service, particularly in these last couple of years that have been so challenging, and wish them well. And we also, I think Catherine Walters' retirement was this week as well, and her service has been phenomenal. So just shout outs to them. And last but not, oh no, got two more. Fireworks has always been such a challenge. And we did get our share of people who couldn't quite wait till they were supposed to start or couldn't quite get done by the closing time. But it seemed to me, we got a report from the fire department, and it didn't seem like there were many fire issues. Haven't heard yet from PD in terms of how many calls they got otherwise, but it seemed like maybe the best managed in terms of people setting off the fireworks when they were supposed to safely and cleaning up that I can remember. I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty intense while it went, but a pretty good fireworks season, it seems. And last but not least, on the voting, I want to remind everyone that voter registration ends next Tuesday, the 13th. And so if people know folks that aren't registered, now is the time to get them in. It can still be in person, electronically, or walk in to get registered. Then advanced ballot voting starts the day after that. So election day may be the 3rd of August, but advanced balloting starts the 14th, and advanced walk-in at the election commissioner's office starts the 19th. So people need to pay attention. I posted just the other day that if people have questions, there hasn't necessarily been a lot of buzz with candidate profiles and so on. If people Google, then get the names of the candidates from the election commissioner's office or otherwise. If they just Google it on somebody's phone or on the internet, every one of the primary candidates for mayor and for District 3 have Facebook pages of some sort so that people could, most of them have Facebook pages, but also if people Google, the Capitol Journal did a series of articles on the candidates, and every one of our city election candidates that's in the primary was interviewed, and those are pretty good so that people will vote. What I find as I work, that campaigning in the district is that people may be registered, but they're reluctant to vote because they're really uncertain about what the deal is. And so I hope everyone will encourage those reluctant voters to go ahead and vote. And that's it.
Thank you very much. If I may, just to take a little bit of privilege, I want to make sure I cleared something up in my comments earlier when I was talking about focusing on the positive things here in Topeka. I didn't in any way mean to imply that the issues that were brought forth by Council Member Valdivia Acla were not worthy of attention, because they are. And it is important that while we look at the positive things, that we don't overlook those things that get lost in the bushes. So I still think that it's important that we do everything we can to make it inclusive for everyone so that it isn't overlooked. And so I just want to make that clarified, that when I mentioned focusing on positive things, that it didn't want to diminish their needs and requests. So in that is the end of our announcements. We do, as you were mentioning, have 2 executive sessions tonight. And so if the city clerk would read, you're going to read.
I'd like to make the motion.
You're going to make the motion.
Recommend a motion to be made.
Okay.
By the governing body. The motion would be to recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations relating to the Topeka Police Department labor agreement as authorized by KSA 75-4319B3. The motion would also include requesting the following staff: City Manager Trout, Chief of Staff Cochran, HR Director Russell, Budget Director Wade, myself, Senior Assistant City Attorney Kuckelman, Chief of Litigation Starr, and Acting Chief Wheelis.
Okay. having read the parameters and the need for executive session.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilwoman Ortiz. I saw her this time. If we will proceed with the vote, please.
Councilmember Duncan?
Yes.
Lesser?
Did she?
I think he said yes. but-
Yes, 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 yes,
Hiller?
yes.
Councilmembers Hiller?
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila?
Yes.
Ortiz? Yes. Emerson?
Yes.
Padilla?
Yes.
And Nager?
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carried.
Okay, having passed, we will recess for executive session for a period of 20 minutes. Okay, we come out of the first executive session, and there is a need to continue discussions in the second executive session, but we will need to extend the time of our governing body meeting. So I'd entertain a motion to extend our time for another,
Well, I'll move that we go past 10 o'clock.
okay, 10 o'clock. Motion and a second to go past 10 o'clock, if we can.
We'll just all in favor say aye. Okay, no one opposed? Okay.
So we extend past 10,
Okay,
and we need to go back into a
yes, the second
a
executive
second
session.
executive session, and if you'll read, Mary.
The motion would be to recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations relating to the fire department labor agreement as authorized by KSA 75-4319B3. The motion would include requesting the following staff: City Manager Trout, Chief of Staff Cochran, HR Director Russell, Budget Director Wade, myself, Senior Assistant City Attorney Kuckelman, and Chief Duke.
Okay, it's a pleasure of the body. A motion? Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Duncan. All in favor, raise your right hand.
None opposed?
None
The
opposed?
motion passes, and no action will be taken when the meeting resumes.
No action will be taken.
Okay.
Okay, if we can go into our second session. Okay. Coming out of the second executive session, no action taken.
Mic's off.
And I turned on my microphone so you can hear me. So, no further business for this body. This meeting is adjourned.